Mr. Hunt, when you're ready to finish your cross-examination, please.
Before I start that, can I just, I've just been passed and I was told it was coming. I'm grateful for it from my learned friend, the note from on ecology and drainage. I've not read it, so I think what I'd probably say at the end of Mr. Carr's evidence is whether I could have a little, I think my learned friend and I probably want a little bit of time to read that before Mr. Bell gives her evidence. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Carr.
Hi.
Hi. Mr. Carr, before lunch, I was asking you questions about reading the settlement edge on the landscape. I'm going to move on from that. But what I'd like to ask you a bit more about is, sorry, can you hear me? The way that the interface between the Red Road development and the open space beneath it and the appeal site, that there is. It's fair to say, isn't it, that there is a mixed approach. Some of the houses on Acorn Drive are side-on and some are rear-on. Those closest to the entrance are rear. The rears of those face the what is currently the open space on the appeal site. But as we progress further into the appeal site, there are some properties, I think, lower down which are side-on, correct?
These are side-on in, I need to get closer. So these properties here are side-on,
yeah,
with the gardens between. These are backing on with the gardens at back. That's backing on, gardens at back.
yeah.
And gardens at back.
Thank you. But once we get to the largest area of open space between the development, or the appeal site and the existing development, the properties on Acorn Drive face that open space, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And these are in elevated positions, so it's like over and out across the wide landscape.
Yeah, and that was done at least in part to create a positive relationship between those dwellings and that open space.
I think I don't have the design access statement for that. Potentially, I think it's because the levels are so dramatic in this location that it was not possible to put development here. But I think that was probably the driving factor behind it. But nonetheless, they do have a view over the open space and beyond.
And that's a positive relationship between those dwellings and the open space.
It's it allows you to overlook that open space and beyond.
Thank you. And by contrast, the dwellings in essentially the same location on the other side of the open space on the appeal site would back onto that open space.
Yeah, I think that's the logical thing to do when the Red Road scheme is looking over the landfalls away, whereas on the south side you'd be looking into the slope. So I think your slope is behind you. You haven't got the same relationship to open space. So there is a view out to be had here. There isn't a view out at the back of these to be had. And you're at a lower level in any event. So, and we've got a different site shape. So like this development needs to have areas where you would have the main street as your primary point of public realm, with secondary areas where the ecology and biodiversity areas are.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, there's a bit of a form of view on that. In terms of the issues raised in the council's statement of case, we don't need to term it up, I'll just go through it. You deal with them in your proof at page 2. The first one was that the layout is dominated by a long single access road. That, as a matter of fact, is undoubtedly correct, isn't it?
I think it's the word dominated. I think it's part of what I would call a street rather than a road. So we're into definitions of what the road is, and for us it's in the reason for refusal. I think they were thinking it's just one long line of a road, but in fact it goes up and down, and it has the way that road is clad, it becomes a street in our view. So I think you're right
That's what they said, and there is a road, there is one road through the development, but I think in my view that's more of a street with a much more varied and interactive place about it than the council are purporting in their reason for refusal.
Okay, and this, well, I mean, it's clearly it is, on any reasonable view, a long cul-de-sac, isn't it?
The word long, I mean, we could give it a meterage if you like. It's about the same length as Acorn Drive. So it's of a length. If you would say that Acorn Drive is a long cul-de-sac, then that could be the definition of long, if you like that.
Within the Acorn Drive development, as in the other developments in the vicinity, there is more connectivity, isn't there? There is a footpath, for example, from Acorn Drive connecting to Wyeston Road near the school.
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is other points of connection. It's got a wider frontage to Wyeston Road than our scheme has.
Yeah, and obviously the path of the road is much more more varied. It's not as much. It's not entirely a straight line here, but it is essentially along a curved line.
There is one. There is slightly more curve. It's not much in it, but there is slightly more curve in the Red Row Acorn Drive. Okay.
And in terms of the question of domination, if that's thought a controversial term, the road determines to a very large extent the remainder of the layout, doesn't it? It restricts and limits what can be done.
I wouldn't say it restricts and limits. It is the backbone to the development, and I think it's the word domination. For me, it's all the other design components that you'll read, as I tried to explain earlier. It's not the tarmac that you read, it's the things in and around it that have a part to play here. So you need to keep it in perspective, basically.
Okay. The road serves more than a cluster of new houses, doesn't it? There's not just simply a few houses on here, we know, nearly 87, previously over 100.
Serves 87 houses.
Okay. Could I ask you to take up the National Design Guide, CD 5.6? Sorry,
the guide.
I beg your pardon.
Code.
I'm sorry. I'm 5.8. I'm sorry. The design code, not the design guide.
Bear with.
I just want to pick up one point here for the moment. I'll come back to a little bit to it.
5.5 is National Policy Framework. Did you say 5.
No, sorry, 5.8.
5.8, sorry. It's
okay, I got it wrong first.
Yep, got you.
Thank you. When you have that, could you go to page 30, under the heading Movement?
Yeah.
And paragraph 59, we see there, connected network of streets, good public transport and the promotion of walking and cycling.
Sorry, I'm on page
30?
30, but I haven't got 59. I've got 97, 98, 99.
Just bear with me. Are you in the correct document?
Yeah,
I'm in the National Model Design Code. Have I come to the wrong place? Or are you in the National Design Guide?
No, I'm in the Model Design Code. Page 30 should have paragraph 59. I think.
It does.
It must be in the wrong document. Bear with me. National Model Design Code.
Yeah, CD 5.8.
5.8, page 30.
So does
Page numbered 30.
Yeah, internal page 30.
I've got plot coverage.
Mine.
I think, to be fair, there are a number of pages. So if you want to use the PDF number, because I think the numbering starts again, it might be the confusion. So if you use the PDF number 33 of 149, there's a heading Movement.
This is confusing.
It is confusing.
I've got movement.
Project 915. There's no fault for this. I think it's just the pagination of the document.
I've got 2 different page 30s in that.
There are 2 different page 30s. So could you listen? So what I said was use the PDF numbering rather than the internal numbering.
It's titled Movement with 59.
Exactly. Yeah. Connected network of streets, good public transport, promotion of walking, cycling are key principles, and summarised below, and then under connected places. All the schemes should contribute to the creation of an integrated, walkable and safe street network. And then the second bullet point, cul-de-sacs are acceptable only as tertiary streets. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is guidance which we've already agreed the inspector should have regard to and apply when making a decision.
Yes.
Okay. If we go to the page 9, so this would be, I'll try and get the PDF note, it's page 9 in the document. Sorry, I thought maybe that we have a similar issue. So a tertiary street is defined No, I'm having my, there we go. So page 9, which is, page 63, confusingly, of the PDF. So it follows the page we were looking at.
Yep.
Do you see it's headed street hierarchy, M1 Roman 3?
Yep.
We've got the right page, excellent. And then the street hierarchy below, in the right-hand column, tertiary street, these is for servicing or for access to small groups of customer homes, they can be lanes, mews, alleyways or cul-de-sacs. So the guidance is telling us, isn't it, that you shouldn't use cul-de-sacs other than for clusters of homes rather than large numbers of homes.
Well, it's under tertiary street in the National Design Guide. You do have a Derbyshire Highway Design Guide that's a highways issue.
But I'm not asking you about that at the moment. But
No, but your earlier point was if there isn't local, you go to this. There is local for this, is what
it has to be.
I'm quite happy to see where we get to, but...
Well, can we deal with this, and then if you wish to say something about another document, then we can add that and go to that. But in terms of this document, the development doesn't comply with the guidance in terms of the use of cul-de-sacs, does it?
Well, it doesn't tell you how many homes a cluster is.
Well, you just do, that's why, but I asked you before, this isn't a cluster of homes, and you agreed it isn't a cluster of homes, there's a large number of homes.
I said it was 87 homes, which it is 87 homes. I'm not sure if you can take me to a definition of cluster that says 87 is too many, then
Okay,
I'm with
well-
you, but I can't see that.
Okay, well, is it your evidence that this is simply a cluster of homes and the development complies with it, or do you accept that it doesn't?
Well, I think a tertiary street suggests that it's a street, which is what we've got here, and it's a street that's used for servicing access to small groups and clusters of homes. Small groups or clusters. Don't know how many that is. Small groups sounds like less than 87, but clusters might be more. I don't really know. That's just semantics. It can be lanes, mews, coats, or cul-de-sacs.
So is your position that you don't want to say either way whether it complies, you're not sure whether it complies because you don't know what clusters or groups should be, how it
I
should
think
be
my
interpreted?
point is none of us here know how many a tertiary street's meant to serve, and there will be other highway definitions of how many dwellings down a single point of access you can do that's in other highway guidance locally.
Yeah, so do you want to go to that? Because I think you're referring to, is this the SPD on landscape character?
No, it's the...
Sorry.
I'm not even sure if it's at inquiry because we haven't had a highways issue, but there is...
Well, and
Not
can I just
only-
caution you before you say that, if you refer to and rely upon a document that's not in front of the inquiry, it's likely I'll have to ask for an adjournment. I haven't seen it.
You're asking me about the capacity of a cul-de-sac and how many houses a dwelling...
No, sorry, I was asking you about the National Model Design Code and what it says, and was putting to you
Okay.
that the development clearly doesn't comply with it, and you
I
didn't
was
want
just checking because
Yeah, no, well,
then you'd be taking me to new places for refusal that you haven't been before. So that'd be your
Well,
issue.
hang
for
on,
going
Mr.
off
Carr.
pitch.
I've been very precise in my questioning. I've asked you about a specific document. You have tried to move me to another document. I've asked you to answer the questions on the document I asked you about. I'm being fair to you by saying if there's another relevant document that you want to take me to it. I thought it was the SPD, which we have had in front of us, and you did address for the first time in your evidence
In the interest of inquiry time, keep going and we'll see where this goes.
Okay, so, but no, I'm giving you the opportunity. You said you wanted to refer to another document, but what I'm saying to you is the other document a document that's not in front of the inquiry?
I'd need to come back to you on that, but the main point here is if your point is that a cul-de-sac that we have here isn't sufficiently good to serve this many houses, then I would need to go away and just that would be a new reason for refusal. If you're saying that, if you're not saying that, then we're fine and we don't need to.
Just follow the questions and take a lead from
I'm
Mr.
not
Clark.
saying,
Thank you.
I
Mr.
haven't
Hampton.
seen, but I'm not asserting that,
Fine.
or suggesting that, you failed to comply with some highway authority guidance on the use of cul-de-sacs, from a highways
So
perspective.
you're not saying that, fine.
I'm not saying this is incapable in highways terms of serving this number of
Okay.
dwellings, other than obviously subject to accessibility issues come back to. But what I'm saying is we have specific national design guidance which says when you may and when you shouldn't use cul-de-sacs, and the development doesn't comply with that. I put that point to you. There is no other more local design guidance which supports the use of such long cul-de-sacs in the evidence before us, is there?
I don't think there is, but there is the point we went to yesterday when Mr. Laley's been examined about you can't make connections in places that you don't own effectively. You can't make connections that aren't possible or physically available.
Okay, and
that's also national design.
And that point is good as far as it goes, which is it's not the appellant's fault that they can't make connections onto third-party land. But that isn't a satisfactory answer for the inspector, is it? Because the inspector doesn't say, well, just has the appellant done the best it can with a site that really isn't that suitable for what it's proposing. The inspector's got to consider, is this site a suitable one to be granted planning permission in the public interest? Yeah,
that's right.
And if the developer doesn't happen to have the private rights it needs to make the connections which should be made in the public interest, that isn't a reason why a decision should be made in the appellant's favour, is it?
No, and obviously the council have moved away from that as being an issue to block permission in any event with that other link through to Prince's Road. Prince's Drive.
The council, sorry, Mr. Carr, I'm afraid I feel you're misrepresenting the council's case, so let me state it clearly and then ask you a question about it. The council's case was that there was a problem with the proposed connection to Premier Drive, both in terms of its deliverability and in terms of the danger it posed because of the balancing pond. Those issues have gone away because you've withdrawn, or your client's withdrawn, the proposal to do it. But of course the council maintains, indeed as a separate reason for refusal, an objection based on accessibility, doesn't it?
I think all of this has been discussed when we had the highway evidence from Mr. Price. So the Premier Avenue link or not is evident within that discussion.
Yeah. So the Premier link in itself isn't an issue anymore, but the lack of connection and accessibility is still very clearly an issue raised by Mr. Carey and Mr. Lally.
And the question is?
Yeah, I'm saying that the council has an objection due to the lack of connectivity and accessibility. The appellant disagrees, but there is a disputed issue or disputed issues in relation to those topics.
Yes, fine.
Okay, thank you. The fact that the appellant has used, I mean, the reason that the site is served by a single long spine road is due to the topography of the site, isn't it? This is the choice of layouts was restricted by the topography.
I think partly by topography and partly by there was no need to connect through. The number of dwellings doesn't need a second point of access. So
But when you say it doesn't need that, you mean that in highways terms, it's not necessarily to satisfy the highway authority.
That's right, yeah, in highways capacity
in highways terms.
So
okay.
it was just saying it wasn't what the only reason you were saying isn't the only reason, basically.
But if we go to the DAS, page 51, core document 1.24,
Yeah, got that.
we see there, it's acknowledged straight away, the most important consideration for design has been topography. And I said, we've tried to consider it as an opportunity as well as a constraint. But no dispute that the topography imposes significant constraints on potential layout. Yeah?
Yeah, you have to design with the topography.
Yeah. And the first key principle relates to the road, and it says we've tried to create a road that follows the contours so far as possible.
Yes, and we
Yeah.
talked about that underneath my environment, movement and placemaking that we talked about.
Okay, so just on that then, are you saying that there are other possible acceptable layouts that wouldn't have involved such a long spine road?
No, I think this is a perfectly acceptable way of designing to fit hand in glove with the site shape and the features on the site, including the site levels, where the hedges are, where the planting is adjacent to it, all the things we talked about this morning.
Okay.
So there hasn't been any other way presented to us by the council, and obviously this was worked with the council through to this solution at the time.
Okay. My question was slightly different. I was asking whether you think that there are other potential layouts which don't involve a long single spine road.
I don't think there would be. I think this is the way that you would have to design that site.
Okay.
This is the best way to design that site, the way they've done it.
Okay. But obviously the length of the road is dictated by the desired quantum of development, isn't it?
You want to make sure that the people who live here have got a way of getting to their houses and driveways, yes.
Yeah. So if this was a smaller scheme and perhaps could be viewed as a tertiary street serving a cluster of houses, you could have had a much shorter road. Again, it's self-evident. It's simply, it needs to be long because there's 87 houses.
Yes, if you had less houses, there would be less road.
Okay.
I think the issue of character of the road is that the road isn't a bland or anonymous thing. It's clad with all sorts of variety that was agreed as common ground. It's clad with trees. You've got pockets of open space that you transition and move through, and you've got houses on both sides in some places, and then you go up and down through the topography.
Yep.
So there are things going on that move you away from what the council purported the reason for refusal is not responding positively to the context, character and identity.
Okay. And it doesn't follow from the fact, as we addressed before we broke for lunch, that even if you're right that this is a site which should be regarded as a missing piece of the jigsaw or an isolated trapped field, it doesn't follow that all of it has to be developed, does it?
No, and all of it isn't. Clearly, there's been a lot of work in the early part of the design to establish what parts of the site would be the best, and I think there was a natural conclusion to that with a logical proposal that's now in front of us.
And so if the inspector were to conclude that the current layout is contrary, for example, to national design guidance and therefore doesn't constitute good design, but an alternative scheme with a shorter cul-de-sac, for example, might come up with it, she should refuse permission for this scheme?
There's quite a lot of hypothesis going on there. I think all we are here to do is to decide whether this scheme is the best way to develop it. The shorter road scheme that you've devised might have an apartment block at one end, designed as a 4-storey apartment block. It might be shorter, but it wouldn't necessarily give you a characteristic that would fit in and be part of the character of this part of town, for example. So there could be other problems with a shorter road development. And I also think you've got to keep in mind efficient use of land. So we can't just say, well, it'd be easier if we had a shorter scheme. We have to use this scarce resource wisely to give much needed homes that the people of the country need.
But if the quantum of the development, the size of the site leads to something that's poorly designed, that would be a ground for refusing on the basis of MPPF policy.
You do want to make sure it's designed correctly, which is what we're explaining now. I also think it would be good to make use of permitting this without a curtailed development prevents you having to put houses elsewhere in the district. Okay. So this is an opportunity. We've got the balance right, ought to be taken.
Okay. In terms of the way the proposed development fits with the landform, or works with the site's landform, aside from the carriageway, there are going to be retaining features, in particular for the gardens on the southern side of the road, aren't they, in order to accommodate the number of houses proposed?
Yes, I think some of the levels would need some retaining features, but all of those aren't. I think there's could be a condition for levels. I need to just be corrected on what the conditions actually say on that.
But retaining features, by definition, aren't working with the landform. They're working against the landform, aren't they? Because you're engineering against the land.
I think if you're looking to create a development in the rolling landscape in this region, as we can see outside, sometimes you do need a retaining wall, but I don't think that's seen as an alien feature within a townscape. If it was in a field, that'd be different. This is going to be part of the townscape of Ashbourne.
And can I have a look at can we just go to if you've got the design and access still open,
yes.
we see some of the gardens, I think, which would have to have retaining features on page 50, is that right?
Just turn that up. Page 50, so these are...
On the southern side of the road?
Yeah, so these are the split level dwellings that we looked at this morning, stepping down the slope in that location.
Okay. Right, thank you. And could we look at the sections as well, please? This is core document 2.2.
Sure.
To get an idea of...
Yeah, so there's a key plan in the top corner of that, if everybody's there.
So bear with me 1 second.
So you're looking at plot 22 would be in that 3D view.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so yes, it's there. So I mean, there's a fairly significant retaining wall proposed there, and across section A, which is plot I think 83 and number 5. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the illustrative site sections. They're kind of a general arrangement of what levels would do, but you're right, there are proposed on that illustratively a retaining wall. My experience of these is that any developer will try to design those out if possible, because they're a structure that is quite cost prohibitive to develop, but a retaining wall would be part of a townscape, so that's
okay.
Comfortable with that.
What we can also see from this is insofar, so the areas, if we look at the sections, in fact all 3 sections, A, B and C, these are the areas of informal open space to the rear of those properties, is that right?
A to the rear of that is the A52 tree belt and a planted woodland.
Yeah.
So
there's B is and C are.
Yeah. And then B, you have a pocket of the meadow before you get to the trees if you're on the right-hand side where the retaining wall is.
Yeah.
So that's got meadow and then the A52 tree belt, as we might call it.
From these sections, they don't appear to be either overlooked at all or very well overlooked. It seems difficult to see. It's difficult to see from that how it would be possible even from windows at the rear of 22 or 43 to see, for example, any children running around playing or anybody else running around there.
I understand the point. I think 22's got the balcony at the back of the living room, which brings you out very clearly to look over. There might be a fraction behind the retaining wall where people will be outside, but the crime prevention officer, as we'll call him, is not creating any issues with that. And then on the one below it, on CC, in the shadow of the background, behind plot 43, you can see there is a house that looks down and across the back of plot 43, so that's got some natural surveillance up and down the rear of those properties. You can see the windows shadowing in grey, indicatively. But there may be a small pocket or two where you've got some backs of gardens with the ecology areas set behind the houses. I mean, the ecology, it must be great for the ecology there because it's kind of out of the way. It's not near the main roads. It's quite a separate part of the site, and obviously it's planted in the meadow with one cut a year, subject to the detailed landscape design that might come forward.
Okay. Can I move on to the issues raised by Mr. Lally in his proof about the layout? Put them to the first one is the relationship to and the integration with the landscape setting. Again, I'm going to put a series of propositions to you based on policy, which I don't think are controversial, but please let me know if they are. Ensuring a positive and sympathetic relationship with the surrounding landscape and townscape, key element of good design.
Yes, mindful of your, as I've called it, my step one of LVIA-led importance to that view from the wider landscape.
Sorry, so the answer is yes, though, to ensuring this is a key design issue. I'm not asking from a landscape visual perspective. Key design issue, ensuring a positive and sympathetic relationship with the surrounding landscape and townscape. Key design issue.
As one of the components you ought to do in good design, yes.
Thank you. Particularly if it's an edge of settlement location, and the reason I'm saying that is PD1 of the local plan.
Particularly if it's an edge of town, I think you'd want to be doing it wherever you were, and edge of settlement is something that might need you to do different things to address the edge. If it's if your LVIA has said that you're a very prominent part of the edge, then your design strategies might need to you would have a mitigation to address that particular landscape impact point if there was one.
Okay. Can I ask you, I'm just going to ask one further point about this. Could you turn up the neighbourhood plan, please, which is core document 5.3?
Sure. Yep, got that.
And within that, could you go, please, to section 4, page 18?
Section 4. Yep.
Yeah. And you see there it says Ashbourne has a strong visual character. It's important that any new development recognises and respects that character and contributes to the quality of this special place. Do you agree or disagree? Do you agree or disagree with any of that?
Sorry, I just lost you there for a minute. Which one was it again?
So paragraph 1, Ashbourne has a strong visual character.
Important.
You accept that?
Yes, that's fine. I think the local landscape character, PD5, wasn't a reason for refusal, but just to put that in perspective, the landscape character wasn't a reason for refusal. But.
Okay, and it's important, therefore, that the new development recognises and respects it and contributes to the quality of this special place. You happy with that?
Yes.
4.2, important that residential developments which are needed to meet housing supply targets should be interesting and sensitive to their location. Agree with that?
Yes. Yep.
Shouldn't be an anywhere type estate. Agree with that?
Yes.
And must respond to the strong, or must not fail to respond to the strong character of Ashbourne and lack a sense of place. Agree? Those.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Could I ask you then to go back? Whilst I say go back, I think to go to the National Design Guide. I think we looked at the model code before, the design guide. So this is core document 5.6. When you have that, if you could turn to page 8 first of all.
Numbered page 8 rather than PDF.
Yeah, PDF page 12, I think.
I'm really sorry, is it CD 5.6 or 5.8?
It is, yeah, sorry, yeah. Sorry,
I'm on the 5.6, page 8 is...
10 characteristics of a well-designed place. Yep. Okay, we've looked at one of them briefly before movement. But we see there's the number of them, and starting with context and identity. You see that?
Yep.
And of course, context and identity are two concepts invoked explicitly in the Council's reasons for refusal. Mm-hmm. So plainly important for us to look at. Agreed?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And if we go on then, please, to the page 10, 14 in the PDF, heading context.
Yeah. It's PDF 10 and 10
Yeah.
in mine, but yeah.
We see there under paragraph 40, we see paragraph 39, the importance, of understanding context, history and cultural characteristics of the site. So you need a proper understanding of the place in order to design. No dispute about that.
No, that's fine, yeah.
40, well-designed places are, again, we see a sound understanding of the features of the site surrounding context, but then integrated so they relate well and influenced by and influence their context positively. Again, no dispute over those being key design principles.
No, comfortable with those.
Thank you. And if we go over the page, we see a little more on what's meant by integrated and relating well. So under paragraph 43, it says well-designed development is integrated into its wider surroundings physically, socially and visually. So when we're considering whether this site is well integrated, we should consider it from all of those points of view or perspectives.
Yep.
Good, thank you. Point I do want to pick up, important to pick up, I think, but albeit probably well known and I hope not in dispute, we see at 41 on the left-hand column, design development responds positively to features of the site itself and surrounding context beyond the site boundary. It enhances positive qualities and improves negative ones. So that's important, isn't it, in the sense that if there is a bad precedent set nearby, we don't follow it. We follow good precedents or take inspiration from positive things, not negative things.
Enhances positive qualities, improve negative ones. I think that's of the site that you're designing within. It's not for neighbouring sites, if that's what you were saying.
Okay, I think it is, isn't it? Because the first sentence says you respond positively to features of the site itself. So you need to respond to the site itself and features of the surrounding context. So it's talking about responding to both internal response to the site and external response to its surroundings.
It's saying you need to look at both, which is fine, and enhances positive qualities, improve negative ones. I think those positive, negative qualities are the site that it's referring to.
Okay, well,
because it is defined under C1, understanding relate well to the site.
It's local and wider context. So I think, Mr. Carr, could I just ask you to reflect on that? Because I think it's pretty clear it means both. It would be odd if it just said you respond positively to this. You have to respond positively to the features of the site and the surroundings, but you don't have to enhance the positive qualities of the surroundings as well.
I don't think there's much between us on that. I think you wouldn't want to copy something that was bad, and I could agree with that.
But where it leads us in sort of concrete terms is to say if, for example, there's a feature of Acorn Drive which is not positive, for example, the close timber boarded fencing at the site, close to the proposed site entrance, that is not something which we should draw inspiration from for this development, is it?
No, exactly. In that prominent location, you wouldn't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, last bit of this guidance I need to look at on this heading. Paragraph 53, a few pages on. Under identity, responding to existing local character and identity. Well-designed new development is influenced by an appreciation of understanding of vernacular, local or regional character, including existing built form, landscape and local architectural precedents. Again, no dispute with that as a principle that should be applied.
No, that's fine.
Okay, good. So it follows that the landscape character studies that we've looked at and what they say about, for example, the prevalent built form, landscape and local architectural features are relevant and material in relating the development well to its surroundings?
Yes, I think that's right. We've talked about those, and obviously the appearance wasn't a reason for refusal here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I know what you say. So this is telling us how the design should be approached. And I'll just ask the question again. I asked it specifically in relation to the tiles point. But is there anywhere in the DAS where we see how the landscape character of Derbyshire document, for example, was considered and addressed?
I just need to. There's a lot of paper to read here. We'd need to just go back and have a look at that. Says that it may not be in the DAS, but part of the design process clearly involved FPCR, and they were doing a landscape and visual impact assessment. So the LVIA was prepared as part of the design process that 1947 the designers were part of. And what I take from that is that the landscape was part of the design discussions with the design team.
Well, but neither you nor Mr. Jackson were involved in those, were you?
No, we weren't. But it's this is more of a question of evidence of chronology, I suppose.
Yeah, but what landscape input there was into the design, there isn't anything that's not apparent in the DAS. You can't speak. You have no first-hand knowledge of.
No, but your question was, does the DAS address it? I think the DAS refers to the landscape assessment work. I'd need to just go and look at that, though, to confirm that, just to take you there. It sounds like we need to just go there. So the original app submission, design and access statement. You just find that, yeah. It's CD 1.24.
Yes.
So there's landscape on page 55, and that refers to the Sheila.
Sorry, 55?
Yeah, actual page 55 in the PDF.
Okay. Yes, so that refers to the short summary sheet of how the site was dealt with at that stage. But the question I had was in relation to what's core document 6.27, and it's been the subject of a lot of questions in the inquiry thus far. We can't see anywhere in the DAS how that was taken into account in the design process, can we?
Well, you haven't got evidence to the contrary either.
No, but I can't prove it. I can say that there is no evidence about it in the DAS.
Yeah, well, the page 12, physical page 12, has Ashbourne neighbourhood plan, and then it's got the adopted Derbyshire Dales local plan,
so landscape got a lot of other documents explicitly
PD5.
referred to, apart from the one that I'm mentioning, which tends to suggest it wasn't taken into account or wasn't a significant part of the consideration. Not fair.
I can't see reference to it in the document. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In terms of boundary treatments, could I take you to the SPD, please? So that is core document 5.24.
I'm not sure I've got 5.24. Goes to 511 as the maximum 5.
Let me just check I haven't given you the wrong reference. Oh, sorry. The SPD.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's been saved in the wrong. Yes, you're quite correct, sorry. 5.4, within that, please turn to page 25. Did you see the section boundary treatment cited by Mr. Lally?
Yes, yeah.
I don't think you've taken issue with that in your Mr. Mullaney's reference and reliance on that in your proof, have you? Or your rebuttal?
No, I think the boundary treatments are under condition, is what I would say. But yeah, otherwise that's what the landscape character talks generically about boundary treatments in district.
And do you disagree with any of the guidance set out in that paragraph or two paragraphs? Do you agree that successful integration in new development surroundings will depend on the treatment of its boundaries to a significant extent?
I think they're one of the design components.
Yep.
Yes.
Do you agree or disagree that when considering appropriate boundary treatments, there must be regard had to local landscape character?
Yes, but that wasn't an issue for this appeal because PD5 is your mission statement locally for landscape character, and PD5 wasn't listed in the refusal. But
Yep.
So within the confines of what's left after that, there is a landscape element to design that is not contested, as I understand it.
Okay. And there is, can we just go to the enclosures plan again, which
Sure.
is, find the reference here, is CD 2.5.
Closures, yeah, got it.
Yeah, and it's fair to say is that the predominant boundary treatment shown on the plan is high close board fence.
By linear meterage, I'm assuming you mean, in which case, yes.
Yeah, and I think you're not saying that would be, as I understand your case, is that the point you say it's not harmful because it's not going to be visible. Or very visible.
It's not in the fronting the main street. That might be the occasional side that you do get the timber, but the predominant frontage there is either the built form or the brick walls.
Okay.
And then when you've got the softer landscape interface, that's where you've got the timber boundary treatment to the gardens. You need it for privacy.
Okay. And but we've also already agreed that it will be visible to anybody who goes onto the informal open space, which is intended for recreational or available for recreational use.
Depending on what you do with your condition for landscaping, you might choose to put some of the scrub up against it, for example, if that's in the gift of the local authority to do.
Okay. And it's maybe visible, it's likely to be visible from other locations, although we don't have any specific viewpoints, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to. I think you could get some glimpsed views to it. If you were looking across from the golf course, you might glimpse the boundaries. That's just only from a subjective viewpoint in terms of just trying to be reasonable, really, in terms of that. I don't see there's any harm in that.
Okay. Can I just take you to part of your proof where you talk about these open spaces, which is 6.17?
Sure. In my main proof.
Your main proof.
Yep, with you. Just wait for the people to get there. But yeah, 6.17.
Yeah. You said, sorry, I'll let the inspector find the page. So it's page 22. Areas of site that are particularly challenging topographically are reserved for ecological enhancements. Simply put, existing vegetation and topography hasn't been seen as just a constraint to development, but as opportunities to create spaces, moments that are distinctive to the site and the proposals. But when the kind of areas that we've looked at in these site sections, behind number 23, I think was one of them, they're not going to be very attractive or distinctive in terms of being attractive for people to go and recreate there, are they? Hidden behind the retaining wall of number 23, for example.
No, that's not their primary purpose, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other areas that are the moments or created spaces, I've explained those earlier, like where the play area is, the open space on the way in, and where we've got the retrained tree 7. So there are areas that are open space that have a function for biodiversity and ecology, but also have a visual function. People can look at them and enjoy the openness in and around their houses.
Okay. But they're not going to be, I mean, there's not going to be much, they're not going to be very visible because of the retaining, the intercepting the view.
They would be in certain areas, you'd be on either the balconies or you'd be around the corner looking at them obliquely, but they're not, this isn't a be-all and end-all need to be able to see all these areas. In the modern world that we're in, biodiversity is part of the design components that you look at. In fact, you can go to that in the National Design Guide. Let's just turn that up, actually.
CD 5.8.
Yes, National Design Code. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, so is it? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Is it the code?
No, I think you're right. National Design Code. It's CD 5.8. Bear with me. And if you go to, let me just check from memory. I think it's. Yeah, bear with me.
So we're looking for something about ecology.
How biodiversity? Yeah, here we go. Page 27. So this is National Design Code integrating your ecology with your development. So page.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Is this 27?
Sorry, page 26. Actual page 26 in the National Design Code. So it's 5.8, page 26.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry, the design code and PDF page 26, or the internal pagination?
Internal paginated page. So page number 26.
Bearing in mind there are, I think...
2 page 26s, here we go.
Yeah.
It's page 81 in the PDF that I've got.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask for the header?
As in the top of the page header?
Yeah.
It's page 26, Biodiversity Design Principles. Yeah, it's not easy when there's 2 sets of page numbers. So in there, that shows you that nowadays design isn't just about grass for people to walk on, it's about a much more multifunctional use of open space. So if you go round that development, it's an ecological network on the right-hand side, with interconnected ecological network. You've then got things that we don't have. Not everywhere needs this, and our biodiversity net gain assumption knows that. We haven't got a river, we haven't got green roofs and walls, but we have got, habitat creation, and we've got planting that is native tree and shrub species, and we've got existing features such as trees, hedgerows, etc. And I'm not your ecologist here, but I think there is a range of habitats that were being created, including different sorts of grassland, as well as the scrub and other habitats that we're creating here. So all I'm taking you to this point is that design of the open space is multifunctional. There will be some pieces of open space where we aren't designing them for people at the top of the tree, we're designing them for biodiversity. Forgive the pun, at the top of the tree.
But insofar as they were set out as being informal open space, and you've talked about providing distinctive spaces and moments, there are areas, I think you've accepted, whatever function they perform ecologically, they're not going to provide particularly attractive areas for informal recreation, some of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I've not said that everywhere. In my item 617 in the main proof where we started, I'm not saying that everywhere is a moment. There's a hierarchy to space.
Okay, thank you. Can I move on to one of the other, the one of the other 10 characteristics of what makes a well-designed place, which we touched on before, movement again. So if you go back to the design guide first of all, CD56.
Yep.
We'll be coming back to the model design code in a moment. And when you have that, if you go please to page 20. Sorry, just bear with me a second. I thought it was 22 and I'm now...
Headed built form, B3.
I'm sorry, so can I just check, sorry Mum, did I say the design guide? I did, hopefully I did, yep. So page 22, yep, I've got it right. So that is page 26 in the PDF, it's a design code that's problematic.
Page 26, did you say? Yeah.
Okay.
Nature.
So we see there, paragraph 76.
Different place.
Successful development depends on movement network that makes connections to destinations, places and communities both within the site and beyond its boundaries. Do you agree, disagree with that as a design principle?
Yep, no, agree with that. Depends where your destinations are, but yeah.
But in this case, there are no external connections beyond the site boundary other than the site access road, agreed?
That's right, that's where your destinations are in that direction.
Right. As I say, unlike the Red Rose site, which has a footpath link, there are no footpath links to provide a choice of routes?
No, we've got the one access point, so that's the route. But I don't see that as an attractive route.
Okay.
But yes, that's the only choice you've got here.
Okay, and there's no internal linkages, choice of linkages, is there? Essentially just as the spurs off the spine road. There's no, or can't go one way around or the other way around, depending on
and no, you've got the primary street to come and go from the development, and I don't think we've seen any evidence that that's not enough for creating the connections that you need to the destinations, places, and it will help that community mission there. For, as I referred to earlier, you will know that people are here because they need to be here. They're not passing through.
Okay. Could you go, sorry, can you now flip to the other document, the design code, CD 5.8, this time page 7, I'll try and work out whether it's the PDF, where it is in the PDF numbering.
Thanks. So, paginated page 7.
Sorry, bear with me. There it is. So it's PDF number 62 under the section movement. Do you have that?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so the point I've just made, paragraph 19, connected street works one provides variety and choice of streets for moving around a place. There is no variety and choice here. Single road, spurs off, only one way to go.
Yeah, you have the way in and out that we have for the development, but as we've referred to earlier, that there's only, you can only work with what you've got, but this should not be a reason to block development when you have sufficient connectivity to serve the purpose that we serve here.
There would have been, he talks about then direct routes being best because they're most efficient. The western link along Premier Drive would have provided a more direct route to Riverside Park and other attractions in that direction, correct?
I think we'd have to just touch base with Mr. Price's evidence on highways and connectivity. He's the man who's looked at that closely.
Yeah. As far as it would, so that is simply not possible anymore. It was hoped to be possible, but it isn't. Yeah.
No, it's not possible with this scheme. I think we also just need to keep that in perspective, that if there was a very clear policy nationally to say we shall refuse all cul-de-sac developments. The logic for that would curtail a lot of development around the country where there are other things going on. It's not a flat, not everywhere is a flat development site. So you have to sort of deal with different constraints and opportunities.
But isn't the guidance telling us, it's not saying you can't have cul-de-sacs, it says you can have them for groups of houses or small groups or clusters of houses. What it's saying is you shouldn't have vast estates depending on one single disconnected cul-de-sac. Isn't that the message?
Yeah, I think we've already talked about, we don't know how big a cluster of housing is purported to be within this, so I think it's hard, there's no clear guidance on when the threshold is for a cul-de-sac.
No, there isn't. Well, maybe perhaps there isn't, and there's better will form a view about what's meant by small groups and clusters, and that may not help us for us to go over it again. But I think I'm just trying to get you to accept the principle. The thrust of the guidance is that there should be a limitation on the size of cul-de-sacs, because it's too long are not well-designed places.
There might well be, but here we've got a development that's acceptable in highways terms, in terms of the numbers of dwellings that are served off it and the number of people that live here. So we can only work within the parameters that we've got to work within.
But we know it's a judgment call, and indeed we know that the appellant's has been live to it, the highway authority has been live to it, and the planning authority has been live to it, because the cul-de-sac was longer and it's been cut back precisely, or at least for reasons to do with accessibility and connectivity. That's one of the reasons you accepted at the start. So it is a judgment call as to how long is too long in this respect.
Yeah, I think it was mainly to do with ecology, I think, but that's that's for others to bring out perhaps in the planning.
Well, it was objected to on highways grounds by the highway. On accessibility grounds by the highway authority originally, wasn't it?
I think looking back, I think there was an element of that, but I think you probably best looking at that sort of individual case history through the evidence of Mr. Bassett on the planning side.
Okay. Okay, but that's my understanding. I think we see it in CD 3.4. Okay.
We've got to the point we've got to, though, where it's, in my view, it was the character and context of this part of town that has cul-de-sacs in it already, and very deliberately this part of town, as opposed to there's too many houses down this cul-de-sac.
Okay. But if we just go through it, so we've covered variety and choice, talked about directness. Then it says direct routes make walking and cycling more attractive and increase activity, making streets feel safer and more attractive. It's not going to be attractive, clearly, for people living, for example, at the quad blocks at the end of this to walk or cycle to the centre of Ashbourne, is it?
Well, I think that's been discussed in the evidence from Mr. Price earlier in the inquiry. I think as a layperson walking to the centre of Ashbourne, I think you'd be comfortable to do that walk if you're fit and able, and I think that's just as good to walk there as you are from other parts of Ashbourne that have been recently permitted.
I mean, the slope means you'd have to be pretty fit to do it as well, doesn't it? The slope that there will be on that road.
I think the walk from here to town would be a similar slope, but I haven't got the exact evidence to say the rise from here to the centre of town here and what distance that is. We've got no evidence to compare that in terms of design.
Okay. Just then finally then on this, on paragraph 20 it says in a well-connected network each street has more than one connection to each other to the other street, and then there is the diagram which is reproduced I think in Mr. Lally's evidence above that, which shows the distinction. Again, as a matter of fact, there is no more than one connection between any of the streets in this development.
No, that's right.
Correct. So it is not a well-connected network then, is it?
I think it's well connected to the houses that it serves, but it's not connected to a wider set of highway linkages. There's no need for it to be a wider connected scheme.
Okay, but Okay, so it doesn't comply with this part of the guidance, but you say it doesn't need to.
I think it's well connected in the terms that it needs, it's as connected as it needs to be, so it could be well connected to the wider network with one place, but it's not connected in two places, which was your question.
Okay, thank you. Right, yes, can I go next to the quad blocks under the heading of townscape and architectural character?
Yep.
And could I ask you to take up for this purpose Mr. Lally's proof? So I'm doing for time nearly. Mum, I'm not a million miles off, Mum, just for your note.
Sorry, what's CD?
So Mr. Lally's proof is core document 7.15.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, thank you. And within that, if you could go to page 13, paragraph 4.1.
Page 13.
Yeah, 4.31.
4.31, yeah.
Yeah. Segregation of tenures and design of the one-bed quad blocks. I'm not going to put, you've responded to this already, so I'm going to take it, as long as there's no objection to it. I'm not going to put every single point, because some of them, they're going to be matters of judgment we're going to disagree about. I'm going to focus on what perhaps is more objective. Firstly, the first bullet point, the quad blocks are arranged in a back-to-back arrangement that results in north-facing homes, first of all.
Yes, there will be some north-facing homes, rooms.
And that means they will have very little direct sunlight.
I think they'll have daylight, but not direct sunlight. Just trying to look at the exact orientation, but there's no, there are lots of rooms, as I referred to earlier, within houses that don't have direct sunlight.
Right. Okay, there are lots of rooms within houses, but there aren't that many houses that have no direct sunlight in any of their rooms, are there?
But if it was a requirement, then that would be part of building regs. So but I haven't got any evidence to say how many apartments in London don't have direct sunlight, for example. I've actually got no evidence.
We're not
to
in
say.
London. I mean, this is about, there are 2 points. Building regs. The inspector isn't just assigned, do these proposals comply with building regs? Okay, they're well designed. It's whether it's well designed goes beyond mere compliance with building regs, doesn't it?
Requirements in terms of the SAP calcs for external window areas within building regs, but we're here today to discuss what we're here today to discuss. So it's in terms of planning, what I don't have, and the inquiry doesn't have any evidence. It's got Mr. Lally saying that it's a bad thing to happen. But where's the evidence of that from case history, case studies? Okay,
and so my question can be, in terms of, you compared the situation with London, but we're not in a, there are many office to residential conversions which will have quite appalling amenity, but are lawful. But it's not an appropriate comparison for a rural location like this, is it?
No, I'm happy to withdraw that, but replace it with apartments in Ashbourne or Derbyshire within this planning authority that are or have been refused because they have a single aspect broadly to the north.
Well, we've not had any evidence of any similar developments, have we, thus far? There's not been any evidence that there are similar developments that have been permitted, are there?
No, so neither of us have got evidence to decide either way on that one.
No, so let's just look at it on its merits. It's not inappropriate in a location like this, particularly in a site like this with potential for good views on the edge of the settlement to have affordable dwellings with really poor sunlight.
Yeah, I think I just need to qualify what I said earlier about evidence. We had a statement of common ground that led us to believe there was no issue with the internal accommodation, and the appearance wasn't contested originally, so I had no need to evidence this. We further rebutted the fact that this was something that wasn't part of the original reason for refusal. Okay. So I've got a reason not to evidence it, if we put it that way. But moving on, because your point is about, is this a comfortable, you will tell me what your point is, but is it a comfortable place for people to live? And as said earlier, I think this is a perfectly comfortable place for people to live. In fact, many people would very much like to have their own entrance to an apartment like this. They don't all want to be living south-facing with windows, and it's not as though this is going to be in darkness. A lot of the UK light doesn't benefit from sunshine anyway. It is a filtered light that's in and around buildings. It doesn't mean you're in the darkness just because you're facing that northerly direction.
But in terms of 10-year blindness, bear with me one moment, if you could go back to the model, let's find my...
That's why these doors are, that one of the benefits of this arrangement is you've got doors to apartments that give you that appearance, as I mentioned in made evidence about doors to what appear to be terrace houses. So that helps you move away from any form of, it's difficult to see that they're even this maisonette approach. They look like terraced housing.
Yeah, but I mean, the affordable dwellings have at this end of the site. I appreciate there's some elsewhere, but these are the biggest collection. This is all rented, isn't it? It's denoted as rented.
Yes.
Yeah. They have the worst amenity, don't they, in terms of sunlight?
I think there are some of the houses that would have rooms that are north-facing that wouldn't have another window to the south. Okay. So I think they're no different in that. And I think they have a perfectly good and in many ways more attractive than other places because they have a view over open space. They've got a view towards some of the biggest pieces of open space and biodiversity across the site that you would have on the site.
Probably, if I could do this by reference to the guidance, could you go to core document 5.6, the design guide, and then I think paragraph 116. Yes.
Sorry, 5 only goes up to 11, not 16.
So it's paragraph 116 on page of core document CD 5.6.
5.6, sorry.
Page 35, which is page 39 in the PDF numbering.
I've got page 35, and that's mixture of homes, tenures, types and sizes.
Yeah, and so 116, where different tenures are provided, they are... Oh yeah, so yeah, well, they're well integrated and designed at the same high quality to create tenure-neutral homes and spaces where no tenure is disadvantaged. And then if you go over the page, in the definitions, page 36, tenure-neutral housing where no group of residents is disadvantaged as a result of the tenure of their homes. There's no segregation or difference in quality between tenures in terms of siting, accessibility, environmental conditions, external facade or materials. Leaving aside any issues about external facade and materials for the time being, and whether or not they're segregated, because I understand you would say no, there's other, you disagree on the pepper potting point, Inspector can form her view. Mm-hmm. But in terms of accessibility and environmental conditions, it's absolutely clear that they are disadvantaged in comparison with the market housing, isn't it?
Depends what they mean by environmental conditions. It might be the general environment that they're within, and they're in one of the nicest parts of the site, and accessibility. They are the furthest away, but at the same time, there's very little difference between their walk and the next plot, which is a private plot. So I don't think there's a meaningful difference between a private
private houses in this location, walking down the street, and the affordable in this location.
There's no meaningful difference in the distance to walk from both of those, so I don't think there's a meaningful point to be had out of that.
Okay, I'm not going to, given the time as well, I'm not going to go, the house types issue has been addressed by both yourself and Mr. Lally in some detail. There's going to be disagreement about that. I just want to ask you the basic question. There's no dispute, is there, that the house types which we see in the house types pack, and you took us through an examination in chief, they're all standard house types of the appellant which have been modified for this site?
No, you're wrong on that. Some of them have been
completely
the footprints have been used on other schemes. That's because, as I said earlier, there's only so many ways you can do 2, 3 bed, 4 bed houses that people like. There's an arrangement of accommodation and windows and doors that people like and that work well and function well, which is all part of good design. There are many and if you take Mr. Laley's 6 houses that he found in other places, in terms of the footprint, they've been re-elevated. Plus, there are 16 dwellings on this site, including split level, that I've not seen anywhere. They're respective sites. So
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. So if I rephrase it, the Appendix A, Mr. Lally's Appendix A, identifies a number of different house types used on this site, which he says are standard house types, also found elsewhere in other locations, and he says with minor or negligible modifications to adapt them for the context. I appreciate you disagree about that. There's no disagreement about the fact that the house types he lists there are standard house types which have been employed. Is that correct?
They would be standard house types if you hadn't re-elevated them, but I'm happy to agree that there are footprints there that have been used elsewhere in the general area. And as I say, that's not something that you need to be afraid of. Because they work well.
Inspector can take a view on the modifications and whether they are sufficient and so on and so forth. Okay. Right, finally then, can I ask you about the question of tree line, the one you've been waiting for with the definition? First of all, from your evidence in chief, I understand your position to be this, that the proposal is tree lined, first of all, on your understanding of what tree line means. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's on the basis that and that's on the basis of the definition in the dictionary extract that was provided this morning. You are content to accept that as the meaning of tree lined in the NPPF, are you?
I think the meaning of the NPPF's tree line isn't defined in the NPPF.
No, it isn't. We have to work it out.
What I'm happy to say is that they haven't said avenue, which would mean trees on both sides in my definition. So.
Okay, does that mean you're content to take, you're not saying you definitely agree that the definition is as it's set out in this dictionary extract, but you're prepared to take it for the purposes of this case, or do you agree with that that's the definition? So the meaning in the NPPF is the same as the definition that I put in front of the inquiry?
I think that the tree line definition and from the dictionary seems acceptable and fits with what we've got on our proposal.
Okay, but you say you were relieved to see it didn't say avenue because that would mean trees on both sides, and you also referred to the fact that the use of the word either side in the definition. So you said it refers to having a row of trees on either side, and you interpret that as understand as meaning like one side or other.
Yes, and the National Design Guide, I should probably worth just going there actually, so...
Well, can I stick with it? Can I ask you to come back to that, because I'll just ask about the definition and you can elaborate further if you wish on anything else. But in terms of the definition, I need to put to you that you've misunderstood that word either. That either the sense in which that's being used there means both, as in.
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
That either isn't being used there in an either or sense. It means both. So it means both sides. Having a row of tree on both sides, on either side.
Either is usually, well, this is semantics now, but it's either or is what I would commonly say in English language.
And that's one meaning of either. Another meaning of either is both.
We might need to look at the definition of either.
If I could try and give you an example to help illustrate it.
Do you mind if we go to my National Design Guide first, though, rather than giving you that?
Well,
option?
no, I would like to just finish with this, and then please come back to it.
Sure.
There is, in fact, there's an example taken from the dictionary as well. The road was straight with fields on either side. That doesn't mean there were fields on one side or other. It means there's a field on both sides.
Yes, there are different fields on
Yeah,
either
so that's
side.
one sense of either. And as I say, I just put it to you that that's clearly what it means when it says tree line. There, it's not saying on one side or other. It means on both sides.
Yeah, that's your understanding of it. I think that's different to mine. It can be one side or the other. What we do have, I think what that means is that on the left there are trees now and then, and on the right there are trees now and then, and that's what we've got here.
No doubt it's a judgment call. I was just going to just put to you as well at this point, again, in fairness to you, if you look at the definition of avenue, at least in the dictionary that I looked at, you will see that avenues are defined in terms of being tree-lined. So there may be a circularity here. Do you have anything to say? I mean, if you want to say something on that. It's a matter in the end of submission because it's interpretation of policy and law, but I thought I'd best give you the opportunity to comment as you've addressed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if we may just go to CD 5.8, the National Model Design Code,
Yeah.
and paginated page 56.
Sorry.
That's page 56. And there's no item numbers, so the easiest way for me to point this out is it's the second column of headings and green infrastructure. So page 56, the second bullet point up from the bottom on the right-hand side, titled green infrastructure.
I'm sorry, when you said paginated number, you mean the internal numbering?
The internal number, yeah.
I think it gets, and this
I might
is
have misused the word paginated.
I think it's in the second part, page 56 in part 2.
Go on then.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
The guidance splits in 2
It should
parts.
look like that page, if you get that.
it's CD 5.6.
It's
Oh, green
5.8,
8, sorry, there we go.
This
Help
is
if I'm in the right
code,
document.
not the guide. I know it is confusing.
And it's...
Should have called them something completely different, shouldn't it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, do you have the PDF number again, sorry?
PDF 1111,
Okay.
and it should say page 56.
Yes, and you wish to elaborate
So
on...
it's this
tree
item
line.
here that says green infrastructure. And just to read it out, it says streets may be provided on at least one side of the street. So this is green infrastructure. Street trees may be provided on at least one side of the street within parking zone, verges, rainswell, etc.
Yeah.
But that's an acceptance that not everywhere is a tree-lined avenue with trees on both sides. I know there's an image of trees on both sides on the image opposite, but the text does say to be provided on at least one side of a street. So if we were in a world of it's something you can never do, this shows you it is a world that this is a possible thing within National Design Guide.
I think the answer to that might be that but this is probably a matter for Mr. Bassett. There were changes to national policy which postdate the production of the design guide, but I think I'd probably leave those questions to Mr. Bassett.
Oh, you mean the streets in the MPPF having to be tree lined?
Yeah, it's a later policy.
After.
Yeah, but I might leave that with Mr. Bassett. Would you bear with me one just
Well,
second?
they should have redrawn this and redone it then.
Is there anything else you want? Thank you, Mum. Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Did you want to re-examine, and if so, how long is it going to take?
I'm not sure. I've got this many stickers. I just need a bit of time to just check. Perhaps I don't know if anybody else would benefit from a quick comfort break, but I may well do. And then I'll try and knock out as many stickers as I can.
No, neither can I.
And I'm going to try. I'm going to try not to go to all the stickers. It is a bit of a time warp, isn't it?
What day is it?
I don't know. It's still last Friday. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, whenever you're ready then, Ms. Oakley.
Hi, Mr. Carr, good afternoon. Two short points, I think. Just a bit of clarification. You were asked a series of questions about the design and access statement and whether it considered the landscape character area, if you remember.
Yes.
Study CD 627, I think.
Yep, I remember that.
You actually re-examined yourself on this, pretty much, to be honest, Mr. Carr, but just one short point, if you wouldn't mind indulging me, because I think you said, well, you know, there was an LVA, and you referred to page 55 as well of the document where it refers to the Sheila and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to ask you this. So just take a look at page 7 for me, and the introduction paragraph, third paragraph down on the left.
Sure, I've just got to catch up with you. I'm
Of
afraid.
course.
So the DAS is 1 something, wasn't it? 1.2?
1.24. Thanks, Mr.
And
Hunter.
sorry, the page number, page?
It's 7.
7, thanks.
It's the introduction page.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
And I just, third paragraph,
Yeah,
can you help me out with what that's telling us, and how is it relevant or not, whether or not the DAS expressly considered the landscape character assessment itself?
Yeah, it confirms that there was, as I thought, a consultant team involved, including a landscape person on that team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just again, just out of clarity, is there anything in the National Model Design Code or in the design guidance that says if you are going to think about influences from landscape character assessments, you must set it out in your DAS and not in any other assessment document?
No, there's even less about that now than used to be when CABE first came up with the design and access statement guides. That circular on is deleted now, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's not prescriptive as to where you need to do it.
No.
You just need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, helpful. And then just one point of clarification, and again, it may be that I misunderstood the question, but I just want to be clear, it's a point of clarification. You were asked questions about tenure blindness, poor sunlight, so on and so forth, and then I think Mr. Hunter said the quad blocks that we're talking about, said this is the biggest collection of affordable housing on the scheme. You didn't comment or give an answer on that, but can I get can the inquiry here from you as to whether that's correct?
I'd need to just turn up the housing tenure plan, and actually they're covered on the site layout with dots. Just going to go away from the microphone, just have a look at the dots, because the affordable comes in 2 forms, which might be where you're going. There's both rented and then other forms of shared equity units.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for where the dots are. I think obviously there's a terrace in here, and the quads have 4 in each, so there's 8 within the 2 blocks, and then another 12.
Well, no, we've got the plan, so if you don't know the answer off the top of your head, it's okay. The inspector can look at it in her own time. But I
think all I would do is point you to the key on the plan.
Yeah, just look at the key on the plan. That's it. Those are my 2 points, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Really? That's great.
You've done very well.
Thank you.
You're free to go.
I did say I would get rid of as many tickets as I could, and
They're all going to be reused for sustainability purposes.
Did you want to take a moment, just while we're changing witnesses to Mr. Bowl to set up, to read that drainage note?
I think I did, because I've been crossing. I've just started reading it.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I've seen it obviously in draft and looked at it. But if anyone at your side, Mr. Hunter, might be able to furnish me with a hard copy, that would be much appreciated. Because I don't have one at the moment.
Oh, right. I will ask for that to be done.
Oh, thank you. And then we'll need one, as long as you're content with it, we'll need one for the inspector as well.
Okay, well, I think we need some copying doing then, I think, unless there may be additional ones.
Thanks. I think the answer to your question, ma'am, is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what was my question?
Do we need a short break to look at that document before we call Mr.
More
Bowl?
importantly, will this document change anything?
I don't think it's going to...
I'm not sure.
I don't think it will. It just might, but it might mean that I don't have to ask certain questions or do depending on that. It won't make a big difference either way.
I was hoping you were going to say drainage is resolved. You may go
I'm
home
afraid
early.
not. But I, many a slip, and I should look at it first and take instructions on it, I think is the answer, and in case it does.
You got off on a bad foot, Mr. Hunter, because you promised me on day one you were going to shorten time talking about highways, and I've been waiting
Okay.
for something to materialise.
So I think, well, Mum, if we could have, I think Mr. Bowley, I don't know whether Mr. Bowles read it. Have you read this note on the ecology? I don't.
There is one piece of good news on that, ma'am, and I don't know if the message has got to Mr. Hunter, but we understand that the range can be agreed now on housing land supply.
There we go.
So
There
there's one thing.
That's a really big thing.
Mum, could I ask until 22 to look at it? As I
Yeah,
say,
of course.
And it's just in fairness to Mr. Bowles and myself and my client.
Okay, let's all come back at 22 then. Thank you. Okay, have we just thinned out a little bit? Have we thinned out a bit? Yeah,
It looks, yeah, Mr. Lally, I think, is left to get a train.
Yeah.
So that's the reason he's...
and to recover his sanity. Okay.
No, Judge. Ma'am, can I say, that was, the note is helpful, actually. I think it means that if anything, there may only be a minor scope of dispute, but I think, if I could just explain, the issue or that we wanted it to address was whether or not there would be any interference with the BNG plans. It looks like there will be, and the position of the appellant is there is. We won't be able to habitat create in that location for 5 years, but it doesn't make a big difference to the BNG, which I'll take instructions on that. But I think it's confirmed the facts of what we thought might happen, which is there might be some interference with it.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Just a quick question. My understanding is that one of the reasons why this note was requested was because I suggested that we might not have to call Mr. Hoy.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to save time in the timetable, but I'm not sure. It is the position that you don't want to cross-examine Mr. Hoy.
I have no instructions at the moment. The issue is I have no instructions on it. Mr. Robson isn't here. As far as drainage goes, I think it's helpful. It helps us understand the facts. I will take instructions on that. Clearly, Mr. Hoy is given or is going to give that evidence that's in his note. I understand what it is. If it's accepted, I'll let you know. But I can't say yes without taking instructions on it.
And if it's not going to be cross-examined, would you be content to take it as read?
Ma'am, yes. I mean, if there is no cross-examination for Mr. Hoy and no questions from you, ma'am, then we are content to rely on Mr. Hoy's evidence and not call him to the inquiry. It's solely with an effort to try and save inquiry time, ma'am. I mean, normally I wouldn't do that, but given the extent to which we've overrun, I'm just trying to be pragmatic and
Yeah.
flexible.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean, it's totally your right to put forward your best case, but things have taken a little bit longer than we anticipated. So if you can confirm
I
on
will
that
confirm,
point, and I'll revisit the evidence, and then we'll let you know, and we can take it from there. Okay. Any other points before we push on? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, evidence in chief then, or
Thank you.
examination in
Good
chief.
afternoon, Mr. Bell. Your wait is over.
Thank you very much.
I'll just introduce you to the inquiry first. Your name is Warren Bowl. You're a technical director with AME, specialising in drainage and flood risk management. Is that correct?
That's it.
You have a Bachelor of Engineering honours degree in Civil Engineering, Masters of Science, and you're a chartered member of the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management. Is that right?
I am, yes.
Your experience in drainage and flood risk is over 29 years. And you've worked for a variety of public and private sector clients. Is that right?
Yes.
And in terms of your instructions in this case, you were appointed after the decision to refuse. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were asked to give your opinion on the drainage reasons for refusal. Present the council's case in relation to that. Yes.
Yes.
And you say that the evidence you've given, are prepared and provide, has been given in accordance with the guidance of your professional institution, and you confirm the opinions expressed are your true and professional opinions?
They are, yes.
Is that the case? Okay. Okay, can I then take you to the relevant reason for refusal in it's in court document 4.2, but I'm just going to read it out, if I may. Insufficient information has been submitted to demonstrate that surface and foul water flows from the development can be accommodated without adversely affecting the environment and increasing the risk of flooding elsewhere, contrary to the aims of policies S1 and PD8 of the Derbyshire Dales local plan. Okay.
Yes.
And in your proof of evidence, you say at paragraph 2.2 that your evidence shows that the current drainage and flood risk strategy doesn't conclusively demonstrate the proposed development won't be at risk of flooding or exacerbating flood risk elsewhere. Okay.
Yes.
And if you could just confirm that was your professional opinion then when you wrote your proof?
That was related
Yeah.
to the planning application.
Okay, and we'll see where matters have got to since then. Can I ask you to turn to your main proof, please? And I'll deal with things under the broad headings of foul water and surface water, and then see where the concerns lie. In relation to foul water, if we go to section 4.2 of your main proof, you refer there to the appellant's flood risk assessment and what it says about a pre-development inquiry being submitted to Severn Trent Water. And you note there that the correspondence being referred to wasn't included in the FRA itself, yes?
Yes.
And I think we now have the letter from Severn Trent in Mr. McKellar's rebuttal, is that right?
Yes, that was provided in the rebuttal.
We'll come back to that. In a moment then, you say 422, the FRA also states in relation to the combined public sewer, Severn Trent have provided this as their preferred foul water connection from the site and confirmed it has sufficient capacity. Again, I'm going to come back to that. I just wanted to identify the issue. We can see at figure 4.1 the location of the proposed connection, which, if I understand it, is in the far western corner of the site.
It is, yes.
And you then have a picture, or figure 4.2, showing what?
Well, it's actually showing what we refer to as rack. So it's all the detritus. It's the surcharging of the sewer. So effectively, when you get a combined sewer system, when you have the flood event occurring, obviously there's more water in that than during a normal dry weather flow, where it's just being used as a foul sewer. So in that location, then what happens is there's manhole surcharges, and you can see, well, what you tend to see is the toilet paper, but you know that everything else is in there. So that's what you see in the photograph coming out of the manhole and on the ground.
So just to be crystal clear, that what concern does that give rise to in terms of drainage?
Well, it shows that the existing system is already over capacity or under capacity. So it can't actually deal with the flood flows and the foul sewer that it already has.
Okay. Now, and you go on to say, 425, the FRA and the drainage strategy don't provide an indication of the required foul sewer discharge capacity or any correspondence from Severn Trent to confirm that discharge to that combined sewer is acceptable, notwithstanding what we see in the photograph and what you've described. Now, I'll come to Mr. McKellar's evidence in relation to this, but can we go back and have a look at what Severn Trent have said in relation to this site? So can we start with the Sheila, which contains comments from Severn Trent? Yeah, that's core document 612, or it's also found, I think, in your, sorry, not your proof, in Mr. I had made a note of it. Can we go to 612 anyway? We'll look at the actual document. I think it's in Mr. McKellar's appendices. Yes, or Mr. McKellar's appendix B. If you let me know when you've got it.
Yeah, no, I've got it.
Thank you. So I think the comments from Severn Trent we find on the third page of that document. Could you just, what was the position there in relation to foul sewage and this site? Was Severn Trent content there would be no issue with it, or what was their position at the time of the Sheila?
No, in relation to foul, Severn Trent, they've identified this as red. Severn Trent had advised that the potential impact on sewerage infrastructure is high due to the development size and potential impact on treatment works.
Okay, so could that fairly be read as a no objection, or?
I don't think so.
Okay. If we then go to the pre-development response that Mr. McKellar has now kindly provided in Appendix A of his rebuttal. There's a letter dated the 2nd of August 2022. To Dice Consulting. You got that, thank you. And then can we look under the heading foul water drainage? Could you tell me whether this indicates that that Severn Trent are indicating that they would have no objection to a connection to the sewer in this location, or what they say?
It says here, sewer records show the closest point of connection for gravity foul flows is on the public 225 millimetre combined network south of the site off the A52. It goes on further to say the network currently demonstrates some surcharging on the sewer, along with a complex arrangement including CSO further downstream.
Pausing there, what's a CSO?
It's a combined sewer outfall.
Thank you. And then what does it say after that?
Modelling will be required to better understand the impact of the additional flows on the system.
Okay. And then we see something about the charging of the system and how they'll administer any response. But then it says underneath that, from the application you submit, I'm assuming the development hasn't been granted planning approval. Please inform us as and when planning has progressed. It will help determine how quick we carry out the modelling exercise. In the meantime, the site will be added to the modelling tracker and reviewed regularly until the site can be progressed for sewer modelling. I'd therefore be grateful if you would forward as soon as possible the following details: proposed submission of planning application, proposed point of connection, proposed span date and start date, any phasing details, and planned first occupation date. So looking at all of that, my question is whether or not you consider that can be taken as a no, this letter could be taken as a we have no objection, or it should be read in some other way.
No, I think it's quite clear from what's presented there that they've identified the nearest point of contact, the connection, which is fine, but they've also identified that there are issues there and they need to be resolved.
Okay. Could you go to Mr. McKellar's text in his rebuttal? It's the same document, paragraph 2.15. He says, SDW haven't objected. They've stated modelling would be required to better understand the impact. SDW will have assessed the expected flows from the development using the standard peak flow calculation method in the relevant guidance. And he quotes from that in 2.16 and then gives a figure for it in 2.17. Before saying at the end of that at 2.19, there hasn't been an objection from SDW to either the rate of flow or the location of the outfall from the site. Do you have any comment in relation to that?
Well, I think it's clear from their pre-application response that they haven't undertaken any modelling. So I don't think you can infer what Mr. McKellar is.
Okay. And he goes on to say at the end that his main proof, goes back to his main proof and says, well, it's identified temporary options for the foul soil network to provide mitigation measures, so there won't be an impact on the downstream adopted network prior to any permanent reinforcement works being implemented by STW. So I think we need to, or you need to assist the inquiry on two things. Firstly, your response to what Mr. McKellar says about the permanent reinforcement works on the network, and then the role of temporary options for storage in connection with that. So, if you go to his main proof, then at 2.4, we see what I think we can see there, can't we, what Mr. McKellar's talking about in terms of the improvements or the reinforcement works. And if you could just explain that to the inquiry.
The works that he's referring to are the AMP7 programme. Now, there is actually an excerpt of the AMP7 programme which is provided in the
So 2.46, he talks about the summer programme, he says they have a duty to provide for domestic connections to support planned growth within the district. And we said it's an intended package of upgrades. Yep.
Yes.
Under the AMP7 period, taking into account the planned growth. And then you were saying that there's a copy of it. Is that Appendix C?
That's Appendix C of his proof of evidence.
Yeah. Or an extract from it, yeah.
It includes an extract.
Okay.
For Ashbourne. And what it actually identifies in Ashbourne is ongoing project to accommodate 2045 dwellings. It's estimated that approximately 325 dwellings will be connected in AMP6, 590 dwellings in AMP7, and 1,130 dwellings in AMP8. And there's a plan provided which shows the proposed development, which is actually the airfield site, which is 1,100 properties. So I'm not actually convinced that you can infer from the plan that's presented that the AMP7 improvement works will actually be affecting the network in the vicinity of our development, or the development.
Okay, and in terms of the dwellings that are taken into account in planned growth, I mean, I don't know whether you can comment on this, but is this an allocated site within the local plan?
I'm afraid that's not
Okay,
for me,
I'll leave that for
not for me to
somebody
comment
else.
on.
If it's not part of the planned growth referred to, what assurance can we have that it's been taken into account in the programmed improvement works?
Well, I don't think we can.
Okay. Mr. McKellar says, well, not essentially. I think not to worry. We can. If we need to, if that's right, and it isn't going to be, or there's some other problem with the programme, there are temporary solutions that we can effect.
There are.
And so, could you go to 2.48 in his proof and look at those? So back to the main text.
So in 2.48, yes. He identifies a volume of storage and then says this storage could be provided on site via tank adjacent to the outfall position to provide equivalent additional storage volume to which the current adopted system could utilise during higher flow events, which is equivalent to the expected daily sewerage volume generated by the fully occupied site.
Okay. And then he says, I think underneath that, he says there's a temporary pumping station is another option.
Yeah,
well.
the other option is a storage tank with a temporary pumping station, which would then discharge the network once there was capacity.
Okay. Have we seen any detailed plans for this prior to the...
No.
No, okay.
No.
And could you turn now to your rebuttal proof, because this is something you address in your rebuttal proof. And if you could look at section 2.24 in your proof and just take the inquiry through what you're saying there and what the issues you have with Mr. McKellar in relation to that are.
Okay, so what I've said is here, sections 2.4.8 and 2.4.9, that's referring to the proof of evidence provided by Mr. McKellar. Provide additional proposals for the on-site storage and pumping of foul sewage to address capacity issues in the Severn Trent water sewerage network. These proposals were not included in the flood risk assessment or drainage assessment, Only limited details are provided, and there is no indication that Severn Trent Water have been consulted on these proposals. Maintenance and operational proposals are not included for these additional works.
Okay. Just going back over a couple of things there. So is there any indication now we're at the inquiry, that Severn Trent have been consulted over this?
No.
Okay. And in terms of what you say about maintenance and operational proposals aren't identified, why is it necessary or appropriate for that to be done?
Well, I think at this stage we need to understand who's going to be taking on the responsibility for these structures. They're not being adopted by Severn Trent Water, certainly not initially, and therefore there needs to be a plan or a programme in place to look after the maintenance and operation of them. Okay.
Could I ask you to take up the PPG extract that was submitted to the inquiry this morning? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Was this IQ9 or not given a number?
It's IQ11 that drainage day, so it would be 12.
Okay, thank you. I do have, yes. Oh, I come past. Thank you. Mr. Bowl, could you turn to the 16th of 19, I'm sorry, page 16 of 19, bottom right-hand corner, under paragraph 18, so assume paragraph 19, and the heading, are there particular considerations that apply in areas with inadequate wastewater infrastructure? First of all, just pausing there, can you help with the inquiry whether or not this is a location where there is adequate or inadequate wastewater infrastructure for the development?
Well, I think we have to say, given the fact that the existing sewerage system is surcharging, that there is inadequate capacity.
Okay. And we see in that text there's a reference to the preparation of plans. Then there says, this second sentence, if there are concerns about anything from a planning application about the capacity of wastewater infrastructure, applicants can be asked to provide information about how the proposed development will be drained and wastewater dealt with. Applications for developments relying on anything other than a connection to a public sewage treatment plant will need to be supported by sufficient information to understand the potential implications for the water environment. If we pause there and ask you the question this, as matters stand, if there was a proposal, be it contingent or hypothetical, for temporary storage, is this a case where the applicant is just relying on a connection to a public sewage treatment plant?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay. We see various references in this to consultation with the sewerage company. That's the second paragraph on page 17. Then at the bottom, and then further on down in the highlighted text, where a connection to the public sewage treatment plant isn't feasible for cost or practicality reasons, a packaged sewage treatment plant can be considered. That's not being proposed here.
Well, actually, on the figure that's been released today with the environmental, that refers to it as a temporary package pump system or station.
Okay. And if that is what it is, you see that could either be adopted in due course by a sewage company or owned and operated by an undertaker under a new appointment or variation. And then the bottom page, a proposal of packaged sewage treatment plant and infrastructure should set out clearly the responsibility and means of operation and management to ensure a permit isn't likely to be infringed in the life of the plant, and then there may also be other effects because of need for sludge to be removed from a tanker. So where do you stand on the need for details of this to be provided? Are they simply a matter that can be taken on faith, or something that needs to be provided before the proposal can be appropriately approved?
Well, I think it's clear from certainly the last section that you read there that, it does specifically ask for clearly set out responsibility and means of operation and management.
Have we got any details for those at all?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anything else you want to add on the matter of foul water? So I said at the start of my questions to you, I took you to your proof where it said that inadequate information has been provided to conclusively resolve the drainage issues. Is that the position now in relation to foul water, or what is the position?
There are further proposals that weren't provided in the FRA and the drainage strategy. I think there's still some additional details that are required.
Thank you.
But certainly, as I say, in relation to what's being proposed, because it's not a standard connection to a foul sewer, so I think it's important to provide additional information so that the planners are fully aware of what's being consented, and also then, as I say, quite clearly it asks for clarification on responsibility and operation and management.
I mean, okay, I'll leave that there. No, thank you. Can I ask you then I'm going to ask you next about surface water. And if we go to your main proof, page 4, sorry, let's see if I do this one. I'm sorry, not page, I'm on your, I beg your pardon, not page 4, page 9. Right, I'm going to give you the floor here, Mr. Bell. Can you explain what your principal concerns are in relation to surface water on this site?
I suppose there are two real aspects of surface water. What's been designed relates to the impermeable surfaces that are created by the development, so the roads and the roofs. So that's the surface water system that's being designed at the moment. And I have no issues with that, other than where it discharges into the watercourse, which we can come back to. But my main concern, actually, from being on site, is seeing the hillside beside the development and the runoff from that. So flood risk assessments should look at the flood risk to and from the development. So the risk from the development is when you're discharging your runoff downstream, and the risk to the development is, are you adequately dealing with the water that's going to land on the development or run off to the development? And that's the issue that fundamentally for me here, I think, was missed in the original flood risk assessment, and really missed in Mr. McKellar's original proof. His rebuttal does refer to drainage now. If I go to section 2.22. It now states the aspect of greenfield runoff from the adjacent land would be dealt with a detailed design stage by design of a suitable land drainage to the northern boundary to intercept any flows from the catchment to the north and direct flows along the boundary of the site before ultimately outfalling to the watercourse in agreement with the LLFA. This is standard practice as part of the design and development and forms part of the detailed design of the site post-planning.
Okay, and he says that doesn't affect the on-site drainage system or strategy anyway, it would be separate to it. So again, can I have, this is his response in your rebuttal, so this is the opportunity for you to respond to it now.
Well, yeah, so this is his response to my
Yep.
proof of evidence. And I suppose the questions would still arise. We're still going to come back to the responsibility and means of operation and maintenance. Who will be responsible for that cut-off drain? What form is it going to take? Is it going to be a swale? Will it be a French drain? Will it be a ditch? They all have slightly different requirements for space and also maintenance. Something like a French drain would be a narrower structure. However, it can be impacted by the roots of trees. So where will these drains be? Will they be within the gardens of the development? So will it be a ditch? Will it form a feature? That would be a good option, because out of sight, out of mind, if you put it beyond the fence line, nobody's ever going to see it until there's a problem. So those are the things that I'm sort of thinking that we need to consider. We also now need to consider the land, the space available between the development and the adjoining sites. And finally, we're going to discharge it downstream, so we're going to discharge it into the same water course where the surface water system is proposing to discharge. So again, we'd need to know the peak flows and then the water course downstream. Now, when I was out on site, we identified where we believed that was going to be, which is shown in my proof of evidence as figure 5.4, which is a little minor ditch that runs along the back of Highfield Road. Now, further downstream, it joins with the culvert flow from under the A52, and it becomes a much wider channel. But in the location that's indicated initially, we seem to be discharging 2 additional outfalls into this very minor watercourse. So is there the capacity in that watercourse? Now, ultimately, when you look at the topo survey, it will make its way into the watercourse further downstream. It's debatable whether it discharges into this part of the stream or whether it discharges into the actual watercourse coming under the A52. But ultimately, they join and they flow off downstream.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask you one more thing. Could you take up, in fact, no, because the inspector will see it better from there and perhaps everybody else will see it better. Just to get a picture, the Greenfield runoff we're talking about, could you just sort of illustrate on there what needs to be captured?
Well, is this area here existing development? Now, from this point onwards, it will discharge into that existing pond, but we would need to be picking up this area coming through here.
See Mr. McKellar nodding, so maybe this is, yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah. And I suppose the question really comes then, certainly in this area, we have a very tight corridor between the overall boundary and the access road. And that's where we're going to be looking at what form is the collection system going to be through there. But also, as it's then going to come up and around the development, we'll have to check on the fall, so that will it be one continuous system, or will it be a number of discrete systems which then have to outfall into a carrier pipe? So these are the things that the level of detail isn't there. It's reassuring that we've now understand, we accept that there is the need to pick up that runoff, but just the level of detail to understand how the system is going to operate isn't there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Unless there's anything that you feel you missed off that you need to add.
No, I think that was everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And just one question. So you were saying the level of detail's not there, but are you able to give a view about whether it could be achieved? I mean, is it completely out of the question, or do you think there's a possibility it could be achieved? What's necessary? Or is
I'm
that
looking at Mr. McKellar, who's an engineer. We make the impossible possible. I think there will be an option, but it might not be a carrier pipe running the full way down the outer boundary of the development. You may well have to have a carrier pipe in the road, and it'll really depend on the falls available. Okay.
Well, Well, one thing that I needed to do was just understand. I mean, to be fair, Mr. Hunter did tell me, I think just before the lunch break, about where we were intending to go in an IQ12. But what I haven't had to do is, or had chance to do, is discuss that with Mr. McKellar, because I've been juggling other plates. I will be, I think, probably the best part of an hour to an hour and a half, as predicted. I mean, I'm quite happy to make a start. I do need time to speak to Mr. McKellar, yeah.
So about how long?
Probably about 15, 20 minutes.
So it's going to take us to 6.
Yeah. And it's been an early start again.
Yes.
Mum, I mean, I don't know, I'll ask Mr. But one issue would be, the main issue I think would be leaving Mr. But he's in Purda anyway, I'm not going to speak to him about it, so I don't know, I just wonder whether it is worth cracking on and getting what we can do and finding a sensible point. For example, dealing with foul water and coming back on surface water or something like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, take 15 minutes and then we'll come back and discuss it again. So come back at past. Yep, thank you. Okay. How are you doing, Ms. Ogley?
I mean, Ma'am, as I said before, we're certainly not going to get done, I don't think. But I'm quite happy to make a start and see how far we can get. It really is a question of how late you want to sit. But I mean, I'll go as long as I can.
How long do we have the room for?
I've lost a pen. Can I make you a pen?
Okay, because we've got to finish early tomorrow, haven't we, at 4, so that cuts us down a bit more. I'm keen not to... I've got a long way to go on Friday, so I don't want to be travelling in the night. So I would like to get as far as we can whilst we've got the opportunity this afternoon. So I'm not going anywhere tonight. So can we make a start? Does it split into 2 areas or more complicated?
Well, yes, it maybe. I'm not entirely certain, to be honest. I think there is some overlap, but yeah, we'll certainly. I think there's actually 3 areas because there's a point I want to double check as well.
Let's make a start and see how you get on. But keep me appraised of if you need a break and so on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ball. Let's just start, if we can, with an issue that hasn't been addressed in your evidence in chief, because I just want to understand where we're at with that. There was an issue raised by yourself in, I think it's in your main proof and in your rebuttal about groundwater, if you recall.
Yes.
It's not been mentioned. Are we now agreed that that is not an issue for this site?
I think I'm happy that it's a minor issue. You know, in the rebuttal, which Mr. McKellar, I keep wanting to call you Bob because I worked with a guy called Bob McKellar once, and it's the only time I've ever heard the name. So, no, Mr. McKellar did provide some additional information on it. It is cited as low flood risk. Well, the main body of the site is classed as negligible with low flood risk or low groundwater flooding at the western end, which is outside the development.
Yeah.
So I think the main concern I had was that the borehole data that was used to initially support that was taken in July, which is not, I would call, a wet month. But also that there wasn't any monitoring done afterwards. But I think I'm comfortable with the maps that have been provided now, but it is negligible.
Sorry, just okay. So we agree that we don't need to specifically deal with that in the inquiry. We agree that groundwater flood risk negligible.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just one short follow-up point on that then, if I may, Mr. Bull. If I can just invite you to take up Mr. McKellar's rebuttal and go to section 2.4. And paragraph 2.4.3, because we can see there, can't we, that there's a reference to an existing geo-environmental report. Just let me know when you've got the reference.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Can I just understand, had you seen that before you provided evidence?
I had primarily referred to the flood risk assessment in my evidence.
Yeah.
Which didn't reference that.
Yeah, but it is a part of the application documents, isn't it?
Yes.
That's helpful, thank you. So moving on then to other matters relating to flood risk. The reason for refusal, as we've already gone to an evidence in chief, states insufficient information. That's the driver, isn't it, for the reason for refusal? Not actual harm, but insufficient information.
Insufficient information to fully understand the implications.
And as I understand it, at the moment in terms of your evidence? And again, tell me if this isn't correct. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm clear on the case we're being asked to meet. But I don't take your evidence to be saying that there is a real material risk of harm here from either sewage, foul or surface water drainage.
Well, I think further information has been provided by Mr. McKellar through the proof of evidence and the rebuttal. But fundamentally, unless we know, if we think of the FUL system, unless we have assurances and we can fully understand these temporary measures that are being proposed, how they're going to be maintained and operated, then there is still a risk of foul sewerage flooding.
Sorry, let me try and put the question a slightly different way. The question was, there's no material risk of harm. I don't take your evidence so far, your rebuttal, your evidence in chief, your main proof. I haven't seen anywhere where you say there is a serious potential risk of harm here. Have I got that right, or is that not the case?
Well, if you look at the foul flooding.
Sorry, can you answer the question about your evidence before you answer the question in your own way? Because I have put it a particular way for a reason.
Okay, sorry, could you
Of course, in your evidence so far, so your main proof, your rebuttal, your evidence in chief today, I don't take you to be saying there is a real risk of material harm as a result of either surface water or foul drainage in this case. Is that the position?
In respect of surface water, how the runoff from the hillside is addressed will affect whether the properties are at flood risk.
Sorry, so are you saying that there is a material risk of harm?
There will be a risk of harm.
Where is that in your evidence?
In my evidence, I cite the runoff from the catchment above the development.
So where in your evidence do you say, if this is not resolved, there is a real risk of harm? It's important that we understand the case that we're being asked to meet.
I do not specifically use that term.
So are you now saying that there is a real risk of harm?
If the runoff to the development is not addressed, then there is a risk of harm to the residents and their properties.
And what evidence do you rely upon for that, Mr. Ball? Professional opinion?
The runoff from the hillside, if you look at the original flood risk assessment, identified that the Environment Agency's surface water flood maps didn't highlight the area being at risk of flooding. But then we know from the contour data that actually the site falls from east to west. So once we start putting a development in the way of that, then that's where the risk of that runoff being, or the development being impacted by the runoff occurs.
Have you provided any calculations to support your position on this?
No, I haven't, no.
Have you provided any objective evidence that says there is no way that this scheme can deal with this point by way of detailed design?
In my evidence, I've identified the fact that it hadn't been addressed, and it's only been in Mr. McKellar's final rebuttal that he's come up with a proposal to collect that runoff with a drainage system.
So that wasn't the question. Have you provided any objective evidence to say that this issue cannot be properly addressed at the detailed design stage?
No.
Isn't it right that in terms of surface water runoff, that we're talking about here. So we're talking about from the green areas to the north on the red row scheme, as I understand it. I think that's what you were pointing out.
Yes.
It's always difficult. I can't actually see the entire thing from here, but I thought that's what you were pointing to. So in that respect, isn't it right that actually what we need to be able to do the full calculations and come up with a detailed scheme, we need to be able to have the finished floor and ground levels, wouldn't we?
Well, what you could actually have is you simply need to know the catchment and where it's going to be discharging to. So it's the catchment above your building, your properties.
Okay.
But yes, the finished floor level, if the finished floor level was raised above that flood level, then any surface water could make its way around the properties.
Because what Mr. McKellar says is, well, this is a matter of detailed design. It's not something that we need to deal with before we decide whether or not we can grant planning permission.
I think the concern that I'd had is that it wasn't addressed. It wasn't addressed in the flood risk assessment, and it wasn't addressed in the original proof of evidence. So this has only come at rebuttal stage. And also from what we've looked at today as well is that northern boundary of the site. How do we actually collect that water?
Well, I mean, let's just answer my question first. Is there a difference between you and Mr. McKellar about whether or not this is a matter to be properly dealt with at detailed design?
No, I think it could be dealt with at detailed design. It's really just the understanding and the acceptance that there is a problem to be resolved.
And we have a condition, don't we, for dealing with the detailed design of surface water?
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Turning then to consider FUL, which I think is possibly the thing that would take us the most time. You may not be able to answer the question, Mr. Bowen. If you can't, that's absolutely fine, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case it is for you, but you might say, no, it's not for me, it's for the planning witness, so we'll see. You referenced the Sheila,
Yes.
Which is CD 6.12. Are you able to assist the inquiry with this question? Isn't it right that when we consider Sheilas and what weight we should or should not give to them, that we have to be careful about what they do and don't say, because they are high-level documents prepared for local plan assessment, and they don't necessarily mean that there's definitely a problem on that particular site?
I think I would pass that to my planning witness. But what I would say is that actually the surcharging of that existing manhole already identifies that there's a capacity issue and backs up the information given in the Sheila.
Well, I thought you might say, actually pass it to the planning witness, and that's absolutely fine. I will do. You've now had advance notice. So I want to just go to the photograph that you refer on, because before I do that, actually, let's just be absolutely clear, because you rely on two things in particular in your evidence. You say, well, the Sheila says Severn Trent Water, which we all keep calling STW, even though that ends up being used for sewage treatment works. So it's a bit of a mixed acronym in that sense. But the statutory undertaker here, you say, well, they've said in the Sheila that it might be a problem, and the other thing that you rely on is the photograph at figure 4.2. Is that correct?
Which demonstrates that there's an ongoing problem.
So let's turn up figure 4.2. Because, you say that it shows debris from out of sewer flooding. I'm not trying to be difficult, Mr. Ball, but I'm struggling to see the point on that particular issue. What's the debris in that photograph? You mentioned toilet roll in your evidence in chief, so help me out with what you say that photo tells us.
That photograph is showing the surcharging of that manhole.
Sorry, that's not the question. Where does it show me the debris? You mentioned toilet roll.
If you'd like to zoom into the photograph.
Oh, I see. So you're zooming in on a PDF. No, that's fine. I want to understand the point, Mr. Ball. I'm not trying to be difficult.
It's you know, I can see it. I've been out on site and witnessed it, and actually when you go for your site visit as well.
So you say if you zoom in on this photograph, you can see it.
You can see it, yes.
Yeah, okay. And you say that you can see toilet roll on site if you go to this location?
Yes.
Okay, so we can safely leave that, I think, to a site visit.
Okay, so this photo doesn't actually show.
Well, I'm working off hard copy documents, ma'am. I don't know whether anyone in my team can just quickly double check if they look at it on the PDF, if they zoom in.
You can see the rack at the front of the manhole, so on the left-hand side of the photograph.
What's the rack?
Well,
It's all the
that was
stuff
the
that
other.
comes out of a sewer when it floods.
Is it RAC? Sorry, I just wondered about
What I'll
that.
be looking for.
So as you look at the photograph,
Be delicate.
and what you can see is you'll see the grey sludge coming out in the lower part of the manhole. You can see a grey sludge. You can see paper there.
So, oh, sorry.
That. So that's what's basically come out of the manhole.
So, sorry, how do we know that that's come out of the manhole and isn't just a piece of rubbish that's found its way there?
Because it's all around the manhole.
Okay.
So as I say, you will see it when you're on site.
Okay. Help me with this, Mr. Ball. It's not the case, is it? If that does show what you say it shows, well, so be it. My instructions are to the contrary, and it can be resolved on site, I'm sure. But in any event, is it necessarily the case that manhole cover only surcharges because of a capacity issue?
Yes.
Okay. Where do you explain that or evidence that in your evidence, please?
I don't. The only other location you would get it would be if there was a blockage in the system downstream.
Mm-hmm.
However, the response from Severn Trent as well already indicates that there's a capacity issue in the system.
Well, I'm going to come to the response from Severn Trent Water because it's the pre-app response that we're talking about, I think, aren't we? But just to be absolutely clear, it is absolutely fair, isn't it, to say that you can get surcharging from poor maintenance.
Potentially, yes.
And you can get surcharging from storm events that have got nothing to do with capacity per se.
This is a combined sewer, so therefore it does take the storm flow, and that's where the issue comes from. It's not an issue about normal dry weather flow and the capacity to take the foul sewage.
Yeah.
It's purely an issue where you have a storm event.
Yeah, okay, so because it's a CSO, I mean, it's, as you say, it's taking both foul and surface.
No, it's a combined sewer, whereas the CSO is an outfall that would come on from it.
Right, okay. Okay. So, storm events, surcharge, yeah. Again, I'm trying to just be absolutely fair because I don't want. I'd rather not get to the end of this and call Mr. McKellar and then say, "Oh, hang on a minute, something's been misunderstood there about what we're actually saying about the case." So, okay, that's helpful. So, if we can then go to the letter, let me just ask you this: in terms of sorry, I've lost Mr. Keller's bottle. Let's just understand this, first of all. The flood risk assessment was submitted to the local planning authority. The flood risk assessment was submitted to the planning authority. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Until your evidence, Mr. Ball, nobody asked for this letter, did they? Nobody said, oh, it's missing, we can't understand flood risk issues without it.
I'm not aware that anybody asked.
And it's quite right to say, isn't it, that as at today, the factual position is there is no objection from Severn Trent Water to this development, is there?
No, there's no objection. However, they have identified that further modelling needs to be undertaken.
Well, that's interesting because the letter that was in the FRA is from August 2022, isn't it?
The letter in the FRA, I'm not aware there was a letter in the FRA.
But it's the one that's been provided in Mr. McKell's proof, the missing, the so-called, the missing letter.
Yeah.
And he said, oh right, somebody said something's missing, we better put it in. We didn't realise.
It was referenced as being in Appendix D of the FRA, but it wasn't included.
But it's dated the 2nd of August. It's in Mr. McKell's rebuttal now, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so it's August 2022. Yeah.
Yes.
What that says, if we go to the second page, is it says the network currently demonstrates some surcharging on the sewer. Yes?
Yes.
So we don't know, do we, from Severn Trent Water, whether or not that's still the case as at 2024?
No.
You don't have any evidence from Severn Trent Water or elsewhere that that's still the case as at today?
No, there's no evidence at all.
And it doesn't say, well, hang on a minute, there's a problem with this particular site. It says there's a problem in the system at some places, and because it's a complex arrangement, we'll need to do some modelling. That's fair, isn't it?
Yes, it has identified that we will liaise with you over time with regards to the outcome of our investigations and any impact may have on the planning status.
Yeah. And then what they say is, third paragraph down, from the application you've submitted, I'm assuming that you've not got planning permission yet. Third paragraph down, first line.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, please let us know as the planning has progressed, because it will determine how quick we carry out the modelling exercise. What they don't say is, hold up, we need to make sure we do this modelling before you get planning permission. Do they?
Nope.
So for now, we can put that on one side. And I want to take up where you went to in evidence in chief in Mr. McKellar's main proof of evidence, and it's the Appendix C. Which I think you've already gone to. It's the an extract from AMP 7.
Yes.
You drew attention to the overview plan and the reference to 1,100 homes. I just want to understand, in terms of those homes in particular, do you know anything about that development and how far it has or hasn't progressed?
No.
it's fair to say, isn't it, that capacity to the FUL system is done on a first come, first served basis. Can't reserve capacity, can you, in advance?
I wouldn't think so, but I don't know what other developments are coming through.
But what we do know, and I don't think this is between you and Mr McKellar, but tell me if it is, but we do know that this statutory undertaker is planning for growth.
He is clearly planning for growth from the AMP7 programme.
Yeah.
And he's identified as well properties that are going to come on in AMP8.
Yeah. So we do know that this statutory undertaker is basically, what their position is from the information we have in front of us is we're planning for growth, we're dealing with the issue. Yes, there are some problems on the system back in 2022. We are on with sorting those out, and we are not going to object to your development. That's a fair summary of where we're at today, isn't it?
I think where we're at is that actually we don't really have a handle on what work Severn Trent have done to improve the capacity in the system.
So have you provided any evidence about that, Mr Ball?
I haven't, no, but neither has anyone else.
And I'm not inviting any additional evidence on that particular point. What I ask you is, it's a fair summary of where we are today, isn't it? That what we know, and we do know this, is that the sewage, the statutory undertaker, Severn Trent Water, has responded at the pre-app stage and has not said we need to do modelling before you get permission. They have not objected to this development. We do know that they are planning upgrades and that those upgrades are in progress. That's all correct, isn't it? That's what we know as at today.
Yes.
That's helpful, thank you. I want to pick up the MPPG that you went to in evidence in chief, please. Let me ask you this, if I may. Page 17 of 19. As I understood your evidence in chief, and again, tell me if I'm incorrect about this, but you were suggesting that the temporary solution that Mr Keller has said, well, look, this is an option if we get planning permission and then we go to Severn Trent Water and they say, oh, hang on a minute, we can't take your flow, which they wouldn't do anyway because they're required to take it under the Water Industry Act. That's correct, isn't it?
They are required to take it. However, if they don't have the capacity when you need to actually release it to them, then there would need to be temporary measures.
Yeah. So I'm just scribbling your answer. So one of the temporary measures, or two, well, it's really sort of all one, isn't it? Mr McKellar's saying, well, look, if we get planning permission and Severn Trent Water say, hang on a minute, we've got a problem still now at the date that you occupy, because that's the relevant point, isn't it? It's about occupation, because that's when the flows start.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't take there to be anything between you and Mr McKellar on the timing of that point.
No.
Okay, so if they say, we've got a problem, we need some temporary measures, what Mr McKellar said is, well, we can deal with that on the scheme. What we can do is we can provide some additional storage for foul flows on the site, and we can restrict the time at which that enters the public sewerage system. I'm just trying to summarise for speed, really, but that's really what it boils down to, isn't it?
It does. As I say, I believe that the capacity issue is to do with the combined sewer surcharging and storm events, and therefore it's not a normal discharge issue. So it's purely in a storm event, and the storage that Mr. McKellar's proposed could resolve that issue.
Well, that's very fair, thank you. This is the point that I was trying to clarify with you. So we agree what it is that's being proposed as the temporary measure. We agree that that can resolve the issue. I think we agree that we are able to provide that on the site. There's no issue between us on that.
No?
Helpful, thank you. And then page 17 of the MPPG that we went to, I think you said in your evidence in chief that this would effectively be a packaged sewage treatment plant. Did I get that on? Did I understand your evidence on that correctly?
That's what's actually shown on the plan that you've presented today.
Because I think there is an issue between you on that, isn't there? Because this is not proposing to treat any water, is it? It's holding foul water and then discharging to the public network.
Yeah, no, I've only referred to it as a package plant today because that's what it's referred to in the plan. It's referred to as a temporary package pump station.
But it's not a treatment station, is it? It's not the same thing. A packaged sewage treatment plant is something very different, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's what it's referred to in your plan today.
Yes, that's what Mr. McKellar says in his rebuttal evidence. To be honest, I think he uses precisely the same language, but the point I'm asking you to confirm, and I think you already have, but it's not the same thing as a packaged sewage treatment plant, and therefore the paragraph that you went to in your evidence in chief, frankly, doesn't apply, does it? Because it's not a treatment sewage plant.
It's not a treatment sewage plant, but it's also not a run-of-the-mill. You're not just naturally discharging into a foul sewer. So it's a little bit of a special one.
Okay.
And that's where we've identified the need to undertake or provide some confidence as to who will undertake the maintenance and operation of it.
Are you familiar with the proposal on this development for a Manco?
No.
So can we agree that this is precisely the sort of thing that can and would be managed by the management company, assuming it's needed?
Yes.
So we do have a plan, don't we, for who will deal with this? It will be dealt with by the management company.
Well, again, it wasn't referred to in the flood risk assessment and hasn't been referred to in any of the other correspondence from Mr. McKellar.
Well, to be fair, Mr. Paul, until you got involved, it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, isn't it, really? But if we're happy with that as a proposal, then I think I don't need to really take it any further. So, are you content that a condition imposed on the permission that requires, if necessary, a scheme for foul drainage, are you content that that is sufficient at this stage to deal with the issue?
Yes, if you've identified how it's going to be maintained and operated.
Yeah.
I think I would always say that it's something to be discussed with Severn Trent Water.
Yes, and of course, we know that we would do that if we got permission, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
And that conversation would happen at that stage, wouldn't it?
And that's the conversation you'll have with them as to whether
Yeah.
you're going to remove the plant in the future or whether
Yes.
they're going to assimilate it into the
Exactly, but I think Mr. McKellar it's fair, isn't it, in his evidence. He says, well, again, this doesn't need to be dealt with now. The permission will be granted if the inspector decides to grant permission. What will happen is we'll get the planning permission, we'll go to Severn Trent, we'll have a conversation, and as part of that conversation, this will all be part of what's discussed at that stage, and the planning authority can control what does or doesn't happen by way of a condition. That's all. Are we agreed on that as an approach?
I think we can agree on that. As I say, this is information that wasn't provided in the original drainage assessment and the flood risk assessment, and it's only once Mr. McKellar has been involved.
So, but just on FUL, you wouldn't deal with that in your FRA, would you?
Well, you would, because it's a mechanism of flooding.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Mr. McKellar about that, because I'm not sure, again, where is it in your evidence that issues like this about capacity for the sewage treatment, I keep getting it wrong, the statutory undertaker is what I keep trying to say, I should just call them Severn Trent. Where in your evidence does it say that particular issue needs to be covered in an FRA?
Well, I've identified the appellant's FRA. This is in my proof of evidence, 2.41. The appellant's FRA states that a pre-development inquiry was submitted to Severn Trent Water to confirm the presence of existing sewers in the vicinity. A sewer record, this is the reference to the fact that the letter wasn't actually provided. So it was addressed in the FRA, but the evidence wasn't provided.
Yeah, I think we might be at slight cross purposes. Sorry, Mr. Bell. I've probably been a little bit inelegant with my question. The detail of this, there isn't any requirement to deal with the detail in the FRA, is there? Because we've just agreed that actually this can all be dealt with after permission has been granted.
But the FRA didn't address it. The FRA simply said they were going to discharge directly into the FUL sewer, into the combined sewer.
Are you saying that the FRA didn't address FUL at all?
No, the FRA,
right, okay.
The FRA did address FUL, but it didn't address the capacity issue in the existing network.
Okay. So the issue between you and Mr. McKellar then comes down to, should that point have been addressed in the FRA? Is that fair?
It does, yes.
Yeah.
And I think had it been identified in the FRA and mitigation measures put forward, then there wouldn't have been a problem. But the FRA indicated that it would discharge directly into the combined sewer, whereas we knew that there were potentially capacity issues.
Okay. And just again, in terms of who during the application determination stage, it's fair, isn't it, that this was an issue that was never raised by officers? Or if you don't know the answer, that's fine.
I'm going to say I'll refer you to somebody else for that.
Okay. And the correct statutory consultee is Severn Trent Water, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And it's perfectly appropriate, isn't it, to say, well, they've not objected. They responded at the pre-app stage. We know we've got to talk to them if we get planning permission. We just didn't need to go into this level of detail at the application stage, did we? We're doing it now because we're at an appeal and we've raised an issue, so we have to respond.
Well, I think you wouldn't ever go into this level of detail if it was a straightforward connection. But the fact that it's not a straightforward connection is where that additional piece of information comes from.
Okay.
Just to give everybody the confidence that when it gets signed off that there is a workable solution.
And to some extent, it's all water under the bridge now. Excuse the pun.
That's okay. We're gonna have lots of drainage puns today.
Oh, you can't have a pun ban. That's very helpful. Okay.
I think it's fair to say that the development, the proposal has developed significantly since Mr. McKellar got involved, and has identified the issues and potential mitigation options.
Well, that's very fair, and that.
I think also that you have a mechanism in place there to actually undertake the maintenance and operation.
Just bear with me one moment. I think that's been a lot shorter than I expected, and thank you to Mr. Ball actually there for the fairness in the responses. I think we can call it there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Thank you.
You have. We all have. Maybe we're late.
I have to say, around the early starts for me are just the worst thing in the world. I'm definitely an owl, not a lark.
Is 9:30 too early?
No, it's fine. I'm early.
Do you know, it's a weird thing. I was always a night owl, and recently I just get up at 6 all of a sudden. If you go to bed early enough. Anyway, okay, lovely. Right. Did you want to re-examine, Mr. Hunter? Yeah.
I'll, if necessary, pick them up in planning. I don't think I need to. So just this. The FRA. You talked about the missing letter, and obviously lots of questions about that. And you said the information was missing; it wasn't provided. It was said that someone said this. Could you just go back to your proof there, paragraph 4.22, page 7.
422.
Page 7.
Yes.
Where you quote from the FRA. Yeah.
Yes, the FRA also states in relation to the public combined sewer that Severn Trent Water have provided this as their preferred foul water connection from site and confirmed that it has sufficient capacity to accommodate the proposed flows.
Okay, so you've identified, I think it's accepted the letter was missing, it was supposed to be in Appendix D, you've got it. I just wanted to ask, does that letter say what is said about Severn Trent confirming, or does it say what Severn Trent are alleged to have confirmed there? Does it confirm that there was sufficient capacity in the FUL sewer?
I don't believe that it does. It identifies that additional modelling is required.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, I hope I've got a grasp of this. I think there were 3 areas. So you started with groundwater flooding, and that was confirmed as negligible, so not in contention. Foul drainage, I think we got to a point where it could be conditioned and discussed with Severn Trent Water on grant of planning permission. And surface water drainage could be dealt with at detailed design stage. Is that where we're at? Is that everyone's understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Does that change anything from the council's point of view in terms of the reason for refusal?
Taking instructions on that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let me know in the morning then on that one. Right, Mr. Hoy then, did you have a chance to have a look at that? Yeah.
So, no, we're prepared. As I say, I think what we thought might be the case was confirmed to be the case, but Mr. Hoy says it doesn't have a significant impact in terms of BNG, and we're not calling anybody to contest that, so I have no questions for him.
Okay, well, at this stage I haven't got any questions. If that changes, I'll let you know.
Thank you,
we can
ma'am.
mop it up, I would have thought. But for now, I will strike Mr. Hoy from the timetable then.
That absolutely, ma'am. That's fine from our perspective.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, pleasure.
Can I on the housing land supply one, I'm less
Yep.
optimistic. I've seen an email where the witnesses have said, we have agreed the range of difference between us. So they've simply stated what we already knew, I'm afraid. And so I don't know whether that I'm not sure that does provide a basis for us to take it off the menu, because it depends on whether either side is saying it makes a material difference, and if they do, because then you're left with a choice basically. Well, do I assume for the purpose of argument it's the bottom of the range or the top of the range or the middle of the range? It leaves a lot of unanswered questions, so I think we need to discuss it a little bit more and see whether we can take it further than that. I have to say, I think it may end up, I'm also a bit wary of spending so much time on it when in fact it may not even take that long to do it. We will try, if we can reach a range and agree how you should deal with it, but I just don't think we should leave you with a lot of unanswered questions and cause more, leave you with more problems really than you might otherwise have. But we'll try and make progress with it, and I'll let you know.
I haven't got a housing land supply. I have a 5-year housing land supply. No.
So it's just about the so whether or not, if the shortfall's 3 years, it makes a material difference to balance and weight. If it's 3.9 years, which is
and it would, wouldn't it? The greater the.
Well, it can do.
I don't think I'm
it can
saying
do.
anything crazy there. And the greater.
Hallam Land says it can do. I think people assume it automatically does it, doesn't it? He says it can be a factor in the weighting. But even if it is a factor which means greater weight is given to it, it may not make any difference in the overall balance, even if it's a. But I think because of that, because we can't predict, and you can't say where you would come down on that, we have to narrow the issues a bit more than just simply pointing to the range.
Yeah, understood. I mean, I just read the email at face value, so apologies if I've.
They may have misunderstood, and they just thought, do you just want us to clarify what the difference is between us?
Okay, so we've got a range. Sounds like you want me to look at that in terms of where it might fall within that range. In the event that I need to go there in a decision. Okay, we'll leave that on the table then for the moment. But so tomorrow Mr. McKellar. Yep.
Ma'am.
So we'll continue with Mr. McKellar, but it's probably going to be shorter.
Yes, absolutely. I think probably 45 minutes maximum. Yeah.
Well, can I say, I'm going to take instructions as well, because it may be that, I'm just wondering whether or not everything should be sort of put with a health warning, because it may be, I don't know, it's for the appellant to decide how they do it, but if matters are agreed in a certain way, it might be there's no need, but they may still want to call them, so I'll take instructions.
So I'm hearing that we may not need Mr. McKellar, depending on the outcome of instructions.
This evening, for obvious reasons.
I'm not asking for it now. Yeah. Okay, all right. We're on tenterhooks. So I think our planning witnesses need to be on standby then for Thursday and Friday. And it would be really good if we could get through planning evidence by the end of the week.
I agree, ma'am. If we can, that would be really helpful. And then it's just this question of if we do need to do the round table, is where we fit that in.
So perhaps we do house and land supply if we do it on the Tuesday.
Well, I'm just wondering now, it was originally going to be pre-planning.
It was. That's what was sort of going on in my head.
Given there is possibly Mr. McKellar, which is probably going to be shorter than anticipated, or whatever, whether or not we could do it tomorrow as planned.
I need to prepare for it, and it's been a long day.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not Mr. Denning's available or not, but we could try. But obviously, I'm just obviously aware of what you've just said as well. Yeah.
Sorry, ma'am, can I make a suggestion? Would it be advantageous if, sorry, it was Mr. Denning, did you say?
Yes. Mr. Roberts isn't available, so Mr. Denning's standing in.
Would it be, in the first instance, Mr. Denning, perhaps speak to Mr. Hayes and see if they could...
Well, that's what, we've tried that today, but I don't, it seems to have gone a bit wrong.
I'm not sure that's going to work with that.
Why don't we try and make sure they're available, and then, yeah.
It's simply, it's also the planning evidence. Dealing with both witnesses in one day is quite an ask tonight.
In 2 days.
Yeah, no, in one. If we were going to deal with them all tomorrow, but we're not. If we're not going to, if it's
Friday.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just.
So if the understanding is Mr. Bassett would give evidence on Friday, I must forward on tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got to be out by 4 tomorrow, and
That's true.
if we're doing Housing and Land Supply, I was going to suggest a 10 o'clock start tomorrow,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to be up to doing a lot this evening,
Yeah.
but I could get up early and
The
have a
early
look at
starts.
it. So Mr. McKellar is a question mark, then possibly Housing and Land. So tomorrow is a big question mark, really, with planning witnesses on standby, and then we will hear as much planning as we can on Friday. And if it goes over to the Tuesday, it goes over to the Tuesday.
Yeah,
Does that work?
yeah.
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 Okay. All right. And then, so what's happening next week? Are we in person on the Tuesday here?
I think only
Mopping up.
Only if I don't know, with the.
I can be, I think we did originally say it would be in person on the Tuesday afternoon, but I'm flexible, I can be either. I think if we haven't finished the planning evidence, we probably have to be here.
Yeah, if we haven't finished the evidence, we have to.
Yeah.
And even if we haven't, I don't know whether if we have finished the planning evidence, we could do conditions and obligations either remotely on that day or on the following day.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, there's been talk about a site visit as well.
Accompanied, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got to fit that in. If everything goes well and we get through planning evidence, we could do that next week on the Tuesday, and then virtually do closings and conditions and obligations. So I could put that in as a question mark.
Yeah.
I've never had such a, what's the word?
Movable
Timetable. Okay, all right. That's enough to get us through the next day anyway. We're literally living day by day. I need to know, it's like, next week's half term.
Yeah.
You say, yeah, I'll work half term, then in reality you're like, Okay, all right. Let's sleep on it then. And is it right to start at 10 o'clock tomorrow?
Absolutely. Music to my ears, ma'am. I might manage breakfast in the morning, you never know.
Is it all right with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I know it's a short day, but we've had a long day today, so that'll probably help in a way, and we'll be doing our homework in the background. All right, okay, I'll